Insanity reigns supreme, and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists. It's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubble.
This is it. Hit the heights. What does it say? Overture. Cut the lights. This is it. We'll hit the heights. And oh, what heights we'll hit. On with the show. This is it. And now that Oscar-winning rabbit.
On with the show. This is it.
Bugs Bunny. Not exactly. I'm BZ. Yonder across from me in L Studio is Sackhead Shaun, the creator and owner of the SHR Media Network, of which I am a fully licensed operator.
Yes.
And have been operating under my shameless contract since January 12th of 2017. You want more money? You want me to... Shaun, you
4
want...
years, I said.
Oh, 4 years?
Yeah.
My God, that is...
Yeah. Simple math.
Because it's after January.
It is.
Wow. Okay. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to call Lonnie Poindexter.
Well, you son of a bitch.
That's just wrong on every account.
I cannot.
And because right now he's probably saying, "Hey,
where the
that guy was going to call me."
Where the hell's BZ?
And I haven't. So okay, there we go. There it is.
One ringy dingy. Two ringy dingies. Three ringy dingies.
Boy, this is screwing up my voice.
Hello.
Oh, it is Lonnie Poindexter. One each.
How you doing, brother?
Doing excelente. That's excellent in Spanish. By the way, today... C. That? C what?
C.
A, B,
C.
or...
C.
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 Thank you. So we've got Mike in chat, we've got the Alaskan in chat, we've got Surgeon Booker in chat. This is going to be an interesting show because I probably am going to end up not doing anything that I originally wanted to.
Right.
So it's going to be like every other show you ever do?
So it probably will be remarkably similar to every other damn show I've done. But this show is going to be sort of a wrap-up explanation of what has been happening over the past 3 years. And actually, it's a lot more than that. When did you well, okay, for those of you who are not watching the show, you should be watching the show on the SHR Media YouTube channel or the SHR Media Facebook page because we are streaming through there. And because Shaun is Shaun, that's Sackhead Shaun, I'm BZ. Over the teleolophone is Lonnie Poindexter, whom we have had in the studio as a guest numerous times, and I could not talk to Lonnie Poindexter tonight. So, again, sir, thank you for being here. Today happens to be Thursday, April 29th, the year of our Lord, 2021. Mm-hmm. The year after the worst year in recent known history, 2020, because it's sequential. That's how that stuff goes. And I had a whole host of things listed out. And Shaun is Shaun is so far from maudlin right now, it's not even remotely funny.
Wait, so far from modeling?
Yes.
I would agree with you on that.
Wow. Okay. All right.
See,
All right.
see, your friends already are weighing
what
in.
this tells me is that those with age are
Good.
jealous of those
Good.
with youth.
Good. Good friends. Good.
Good. Excellent friends. Yes, friends that really, really obviously care.
I
mean, Sean's a good-looking guy, but modeling doesn't come to mind when I think of it.
I don't know. I kind of like his beard. It's a lot shorter than mine and probably a lot easier to keep up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, way easier. I shaved this.
You shave it?
Oh, yeah. I shaved just a couple days ago.
Okay.
And reason I look like I have a beard right now, and this is what happens when you're hairy, I accidentally sneezed and held my nose at the same time, and this all grew.
Wow.
2 hours ago.
It forced it out.
2 hours ago.
I'm going to try to do my best tonight to not be maudlin myself. Mm-hmm. Now, when I say that, I mean Maudlin, folks. So I'm BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin. That's Sackhead Shaun, one each on the second mic. And that is Lonnie Poindexter, who is talking to us on the teleolaphone. This is, for all intents and purposes, probably the last live show that will ever be done in the original Sackheads Media Studios.
Not the original, but the longest running.
Okay. And that's why I'm really glad you're here.
The most brick and mortar, so to speak.
Now, wouldn't you would say, Shaun, that this is probably the best studio that you guys have had?
Yes, definitely.
Because
Beautiful setup.
Well, and the best part is the last year that I was regularly broadcasting, my commute time was cut in half.
At least by half.
From that side of the house to this side of the house.
So for those who don't understand that one, we have a studio, and it has a bathroom, and it has a kitchen, and it has two other rooms, and Sackhead Shaun happens to be living in one of the rooms right now. So his travel time is from a bottle of Jack Daniels to the studio, however many steps that happens to be.
Well, the studio... Go ahead, Lonnie.
I was going to state that the bar was the best amenity.
And the best part is you're both speaking about my house as we sit in my living room, and Lonnie just pointed out that the alcohol was the best part about where I live.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rough, man.
Wow.
That's
a compliment, man.
No, I do have good booze. I don't have a lot of nice things, but I have good booze.
What things you have are really nice.
Thank you.
To the folks who are in chat, welcome to Mike and Surgeon Booker, Jack Alexander, and the Alaskan. What I was getting to is I'm going to attempt, but probably will abjectly fail at not being maudlin because I will go into an explanation. Like I said, this is probably the last time that we'll be broadcasting live in this studio because SHR has lost the contract on the house in which it sits. So when I've been saying for any number of years that we're in a real honest-to-God studio that I have to travel 20 to 25 minutes to get to, it really is a studio that I have to get in my car and travel to.
Yeah.
With Shaun, not so much.
Yeah. It's slightly less than that.
Yeah. But in any event, I retired in 2016. Well, you know what? Before I make it all about me, let's make it all about you.
Oh.
One of the reasons that I wanted you to be here is to provide a history of SHR, what it is. We've kind of done this before.
A long time ago.
But it was so long ago. It was on the original Sackheads show.
It was, and it wasn't...
So we've gone through like 2 or 3...
variations.
Iterations of the Sackheads show.
Yep.
At least, what, 3 studios? 4 studios?
So if you want to count my office that we were originally started out of when we were doing our little 15-minute, 20-minute podcasts, it was Clint and I. We would pick a subject and just kind of beat on it and chew on it for 15 minutes. And then I moved offices, so technically the studio moved with me. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th studio.
Wow.
5th studio.
3rd brick and mortar. The first one we subletted an office that was the size of maybe a decent walk-in closet. And we and this tells you how we were just trying to scraping and figuring it all out. We stapled egg crates because we were just doing audio. We were not doing video, so we didn't care what it looked like. We had to staple egg crates for sound absorption and echo. And we had to run because we did not have our own internet in the closet that we were in, but we were allowed to borrow it from the person who was subletting. Every day we did a live show, we'd have to run a 100-foot Cat 5 cable down the hall to the router. So every night it was one of our jobs to unspool the Cat 5 cable and run it all the way down the hall and plug it in for the night. And then we were done. We had to loop it all back up and bring it back in. And that was just one of the beautiful variations of the studio. And that was actually, we subletted for some really nice people, and we really enjoyed that. And that was our first studio abroad.
That was downtown, though, wasn't it?
It was. It was J Street downtown, 17th and J. And the people there were just lovely. They were really, really cool with us. I don't think they were at all politically on the same page as us, but they found us to be a kick in the pants and a riot, and listened to the show on the regular, which I thought was neat. You know, it was kind of fun. And
that's back when you didn't have to hate everybody.
Well, it was.
Now it's mandatory.
And then what had happened was the business that they were running that we were subletting from, it was app. It was when it was app production. They built apps for people. That's what they did. And at that time, it's 2021. You've been with us 4 years, so it would have been six and a half, 7 years ago.
So you started in
2014?
14, 15, right around in there?
Yeah.
So I actually started being in the studio in 2014. 16.
So it would have been 2013 because we'd been up a couple years at that point.
So you guys had already been rolling for 3 years in a ton of different locations.
Yeah.
But audio only.
Yep.
Audio only.
Audio only. And if everyone wants to know, our actual first recording was I had a surgery that I was home on the couch for. Sackhead Clint at the time came to visit, and we had my laptop. We had been talking about doing such a podcast type thing because we were getting pushed from a friend to give it a shot. And I had a gaming headset, not even a true microphone, and my computer. And the first absolutely horrible podcast of Sackheads Radio were launched. And that's how we learned how to use all this different little recording softwares and all that other stuff. But we started literally with a cheap laptop, a gaming headset, and whatever the Microsoft sound recorder was at the time. And that's how we got going.
Okay, we meaning you.
I did all that. Yeah. Clint just flapped his gums.
Right. Let's be very specific because it's even come to my attention that I quote that I am the techno Luddite. I am. Well, would you agree?
Advanced. You are advanced compared to Clint.
I am advanced.
You are Bill Gates to his
porcupine.
Yeah.
Nose.
Caveman.
Okay.
Nose. There you go.
All right.
What are those? What are the stones on Easter Island with the giant faces and the giant nose?
Yeah,
that's much.
That's Clint. Have you noticed that he does have a square head?
Very square.
You could rest it well, and we have rested a vodka Collins on the top of his
head.
Remember that show?
Yes. Oh, those were good times. So that's where SHR kind of started. That's where we were. Developed, and then like I said, went through a couple. We hit J Street, had that tiny, but we were just doing audio. When we went down to Reading Place, and we got a great deal on an office down there that we.
Now, see, I don't know what Reading Place is.
Yeah, you don't remember? It was Reading Place was before you,
right?
It was an office that was in a warehouse that had outside access. It was all individualized.
Was that down? Not Power Inn. 65th?
Yeah, right off of 65th and 50, right there. Set of buildings right over by there.
You'll have to show me sometime.
And that was a great location. We really enjoyed that. That was huge. That was actually the studio was about the size of this room that we're in now, which is a good size room. Then it had an outside office. So if we were taking a break or going back, you actually had somewhere to get up and walk to, which was nice. And it had a restroom and a little kitchenette. It was a great. It was a great studio. We had really good friends that were setting us up with it, letting us use it.
I was going to say, how did you find such a good place?
Same place from here.
As compared to the
Friends.
Literally the closet that you had.
Well, and you hear it all the time, right? Anyone who's building a business or building a brand or building anything, they tell you to go to your friends first, right? Have your friends help you out before you go dumping money, before you go do this. Try to see what your friends can bring to the table and help you out. Well, we had friends who were very, very gracious to let us use that. Office was not being used, and we were using it. Outside of the Black Widows in there, because there was a couple, and Clint does not like spiders. And
imagine that.
That was an ordeal. That was the funniest thing. But so anyhow, we moved from there. They were selling, that building was getting sold. And the same friend hooked us up with this. And when we first got here, we were just, everything was cordoned off differently in the house. We were just renting this room and had access to the restroom. That was it. Nothing else. And what ended up happening is, as the other side of the house opened up, I actually moved in, and we kept the studio here, and I kept the studio in my living room. And that was 4 years ago is when we moved here, and then I moved in 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. So when I showed up here, you guys had not actually been in this studio for very long.
7 months, maybe, tops.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got the feeling that you guys had been here longer.
If it was a year, that would be the absolute maximum.
Huh. Okay.
And that's when we started messing around with video.
Okay. Now, let's go back even a little bit further. You and Sackhead's Clint.
Yes.
Who we can make fun of all night because he's not here.
Not here to defend himself.
Right.
It's a damn shame.
So that's the perfect storm, so to speak.
Yeah.
You and Sackhead's Clint did some stuff on your own, then you guys decided you were going to become an actual network. What was percolating around in your brains when you thought, I have a great idea. Let's invite other people.
Well, and what had happened was, as we got to Blog Talk Radio and we started doing a live show here and there and pre-recording, and Blog Talk, for anyone who doesn't know, is it was a way for people to podcast live, is the best way to put it. It was called radio, and they had phone lines and all the other stuff, but it was a good way if you were kind of new starting out. I know their advanced packages allow some more mainstream stuff, but it was a good way for you to get on the air, have a decent enough product to put out to people and take some phone calls. So we found Blog Talk, and we thought, hey, we'll make some live shows happen just to see. And we started meeting other podcasters. Ken McClinton was one of the first ones we absolutely met who was listening to us. Jersey Joe was another one who we met. And actually, I talked to Joe today. And
how's he doing?
Doing well. And as we started to go down that road and learn more, it started to open up all of these other people whose shows we started making appearances on and guests on and all this other stuff. But you start growing a little bit. You start getting names. And then what happens is you start finding out about little groups. Like way back then was the first time I heard of Mr. Poindexter. It was the first time I heard of Lonnie and checked him out. So you start networking a little bit amongst that at the time. And Lonnie, you'll have to agree with me, 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, the podcast for conservatives was not a large market.
True.
There was very few of us, and we all kind of knew each other.
Yep.
In one way or another, you knew each other. There wasn't the regular, you didn't have the Dan Bonginos doing it. You didn't have all those folks.
Oh, not the big.
None of them were on podcasts. You were either on TV or you weren't on, and then you had podcasts starting to come up.
Yep.
And we jumped out ahead of that in the sense that and I had said it to Clint, because we were trying to maybe get some radio time, get this, that, get that. And I said, podcasting is going to be the way to go. And this was before podcasts were big. I said, It's too convenient and everyone's going to have it on their phone. Because it was the time when Apple was releasing the little touch, iTouch, and the whatever their little walk around audio device was at the time. Before iPhones.
The iPod?
The iPod, that was it. And I knew then. And I told him that, and that's why we started to really focus on the podcast stuff. So When we moved to the J Street studio, The Closet, we discovered Live 365, which used to be a great little podcast site that you could produce through. And Lonnie, do you remember Live 365?
Yes, I do, sir. I do.
Small ownership, but the people were really good. The product was really good, and they got muscled out by Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Bought by Silicon Valley?
No, they had like 4 or 5 direct competitors pop up, and they couldn't keep up with it.
Killed by Silicon Valley.
Killed by Silicon, yeah.
Okay.
Blog Talk was one of the bigger ones, but there was a couple other. That's when you started needing to pay money to be a podcaster.
Yeah.
Before, you could upload to any of these little podcast sites, Podbean and all the other little ones that used to be around the world, for free. And, the agreement was their hits, they got ad revenue, and you got exposure, and it was a partnership, and that really was what it turned out to be.
That's right.
Before they started charging you through the roof to host a podcast. And
on Podbean?
Well, no, just all the...
Or just in general?
Yes. Pardon me.
Gesundheit.
Oh, excuse me. Because at that time, as podcast was just starting to get out, all of these little RSS feeders is what they were. You put your little RSS code into it, and it was it just recycled it and spit out every time you uploaded to that RSS link. But what they were is you had them scattered all over the place, and you had some for sports, some for politics, and they were everywhere. And when we went to Live 365 after Blog Talk, I was realizing that the problem with the Blog Talk is you couldn't RSS feed it at the time to any of the other outlets. It had to stay on Blog Talk. They wouldn't give you an RSS feed. You could download an MP3, put it on your own website, do an RSS feed.
Okay, so when you said, this is me being me.
Right.
If I recall correctly, RSS is real simple syndication.
Yes.
But what does that mean, though, if you couldn't RSS?
So you have an RSS code that's specifically yours. Every time you upload to whatever site that RSS is attached to, where you have placed that RSS code to be received, all those different websites, we had on, when I tell you, I think I signed up for about 45 or 50 RSS feeds. I'm not even kidding. As soon as we'd upload something, it would be, think of like an email from where we uploaded to all of those different websites, except inside that email was our audio. And
it's like what Restream does today.
Yes.
Then.
So you do that, and people could subscribe to your RSS feed. So every time you put something up, they get an email or they get a notification.
Heads up, here we go, I'm on, etc.
And we were just on the cusp of it. And when 365 came out, and we started working with those folks and a couple of the other, God, I forget John Grant, who is out.
He was doing the 405.
John, yeah.
You're on the 405.
John Grant's out of Southern California. Great guy. Him and Tammy J.
Yep, Tammy Jackson was there.
We're kind of the next group of people that we started to meet. Now, as we were expanding, and we weren't getting enormous numbers, but none of us were, because people weren't downloading like they were today. So, Ken at the time was probably getting a couple hundred. We were getting a couple hundred. Tammy J was getting a couple hundred. Jersey Joe was getting a couple hundred. We were all just kind of talking to each other. Hey, how about doing this? Do you have this person for a show? We're all trying to gab, and just see how we can build this more. And I think we all had a decent idea that podcasting would get bigger. So
this is 2015, 2014?
2015, 2016, right around there.
Okay.
So I said to Clint, hey, we need to get everybody under the one roof. And not for any other reason. Anyone who's ever worked with SHR will tell you, we've never asked for anything up front. All of the shows that we've hosted, all of the software that we've bought and procured and shared with others, all of the access that we've given to websites, all of the things through the years, we've never asked for anything up front. We've never even asked for a dollar since. We've never charged anybody, except there was one period where we tried it because we needed to pay an overhead. And after the second month, the people who were broadcasting with us said, hey, I know it's really cheap, and it was like $25 for the month, but we can't come up with it this month. And we just said, all right, fine, we'll drop it because we don't want to lose people.
Okay. Well,
we were trying to pay for the studios.
What you got right now.
The computer, the software that we were using to host, that we were sharing with other people. The access to our website, the access to our chat, the access to all of that we were coming out of pocket for. Clint, Sacco, and I were coming out of pocket. Still am.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I still am. I still pay for the website. I still pay for other things. I still coming out of pocket for it. But we were more concerned at the time that all of these wonderful people that we were meeting along the way had an outlet. And we
Including
started
the beautiful Lonnie Poindexter as well.
Well, and we offered to all of our friends. That wasn't yet, though, because I don't think we offered with Lonnie before.
Oh, he wasn't on yet.
No, that was pre-Lion Chasers, if I remember right, Lonnie.
Yeah, that's going way back. I was doing Star Parker's show.
Yes. Yeah. And that was actually, that's what the holdup was on your end as to why we couldn't kind of make things work at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I recall.
Yeah, I was doing her show, which was being broadcasted on American Family Radio's Urban Tech Talk, which is a brand new network at the time.
Yes.
Launched in 2013.
Yeah, and that was right before we were. And that was really just jacked us up in the sense of timing-wise. Mm-hmm. But, obviously Ken and everybody from that little genre, and I'm trying, as you go through and you sit down, and I'm trying to remember all of those great voices that we had come through us, and Melanie and Ken and Ralph. At one time or another, we've all kind of worked together on that. We've all found each other. And then BZ started to come in, and when BZ came in is when we went to the outlet that we have now,
mm-hmm.
and we really started to gain some traction. And it was funny because a couple of years ago when I kind of had to step away from full time, we had talked. We were like, "Hey, is this going to be the end of SHR?" Because I at the time was doing everything behind the scenes,
right.
And the website work, the audio production, the uploads, this, that. I mean, dealing with the talent. We had so many great talented people, but regularly need to have that conversation of, hey, this week we're doing this week we're doing that. Can you let this guy have this time? On top of a full-time job and young kids. So, and I said, we can't let it go. We have too many people that broadcast with us now that are great shows that need this outlet, and it needs to survive no matter what, because we made a promise to them. And even though I can't do it anymore, I'm not going to let that promise fall by the wayside. And then BZ kind of stepped in, and he took over all of that for us. And as Lonnie, as you know as well as I do, as life throws curveballs at you and the road twists and turns and does, some days you're just trying to keep up. And,
mm-hmm.
And that's where I was when I stepped away from my full-time show a couple years ago, is I was just trying to keep up with life. And, it was so hard, but one of the things that I loved was that we had all these great conservative voices. We had all these great conservative broadcasters. We had all these great people that we loved to spend time with, we loved to share time with, and had great voices. And so when I stepped away and the guys pushed forward, and then Clint stepped away, and we've kind of gotten up to, now my biggest thing was it has to continue on some level. We're not pulling any plugs. Just because I can't do it doesn't mean a plug's going to be pulled. And that brings us through goodness knows how many years to today.
Well, let me just step in, Shaun, and say this, that SHR were pioneers in assembling talent the way that you all went about doing that. And so I can't think, in Blog Talk Radio and all the others that sprung up and so forth around the same time frame, I don't think anybody had the kind of stable of talent that SHR had at the time. And I think that's because, you and Clinton and Rich, you guys saw where things were going, and we were able to address it in a way that we had some real presence. I got a big kick out of because reflecting back, my first, if I remember correctly, my first time on the radio was I was riding with Shannon and Michael.
In a car?
Yeah, in a car.
Because why not?
Yeah. And I don't know, we were going to an event or coming from an event. I remember it was the evening, and she says, you need to listen, you need to go on this show. And I go,
Melanie.
What show? This is way back, man. This had to be
this is
13. And so she called, and then she stuck the cell phone in my face.
You guys were
And I
going
said,
up to
"Hi."
Baltimore.
And I said, hi. And I was on air.
Yeah.
So, and that was through SHR.
And if I recall, we it was one of the nights that we immediately went. Obviously everyone at that time and that we knew Lonnie, knew who Lonnie was. We hadn't had Lonnie on, but we also know what Lonnie's resume is for where he's talking right now. And he's on with Star Parker, and he's on with the more polite side of conservatism.
Lonnie has always been a gentleman.
Well, no, but that's also who he was with. So, even if Lonnie wasn't a gentleman behind the scenes, which is not true, he is an absolute gentleman, but even if he wasn't, we both knew that we needed to be a little more calm, which is really hard for Clint and I, especially when we know there's somebody who we could possibly mess around with a little bit.
Exactly.
So Lonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount of innuendos, horrible jokes. We would touch on politics for about a minute and a half, and I think we had you for a good 40 minutes. It was a long time.
It was, and I give credit to SHR in that it was, in effect, the launch of, in my opinion, of my radio career. Because in I did Star Show for about 14 months, and then I got the opportunity to get my own show through American Family Radio, and I did that for about 6 years, or almost 6 years, and but yeah, I have to give credit to you guys. I was talking to Kenneth McClinton about that. Thank you, knuckleheads, because Shannon.
Knuckleheads. Wait a minute. There's got to be one of this show. Knuckleheads.
Yeah.
So, and I'll never forget it. We were going on that bridge, going from where we were over into downtown D.C. Because if I'm not mistaken, they were taking me to drop me off or something. I live downtown, and so after I went, hey, how's it going? And so she's over there snickering.
Well, she knew what she set you up for.
Yeah, she sure did. But anyway, it was who knew that what the future would unfold, and I had no aspirations for radio. In fact, I was telling BZ that I thought that the only thing I'd ever heard pertaining to me and radio was back when my voice changed when I was a kid, and I'm in high school now, and folks used to tell me I had a radio voice. So me thinking of radio in the 70s, those cool disc jockeys on the FM radio stations who had all the hot chicks chasing them. So
yeah,
I said, yeah, I can do that.
Well, you gave a great compliment earlier, and I want to thank you for it, but I also kind of want to deflect because you said at the time we had the stable of talent that you hadn't seen in podcasters, and I have to thank guys like you and Melanie and Ken, Joe, because what happened was every single time we would meet somebody new and we'd have them on, they'd be on our show and they were a hoot to have on and a blast, or vice versa, we'd turn around and say, hey, you gotta do this person next. You gotta go on their show next, because we were such a small circle. With Tammy J, you gotta do this show next.
Exactly.
And we were just lucky enough to kind of be that catalyst, in the sense of we had a lot of these friends that we were putting in touch with each other. And most of it was because when we first started, we really wanted to be on every show we could. So I would be on Blog Talk all the time looking for conservative hosts or liberals sometimes, because when we were on Blog Talk, we had a couple of liberals that would call in.
You went there for a while, didn't you? And I remember you telling me about one name that kind of wouldn't go away.
Yeah, would keep coming back it was like Liberal Dan or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. He'd come back every single Saturday night, because we were only on once a week at that time, and he would try to argue with Clint and I. We would just beat him into the ground, and he'd call, and we'd verbally beat him on the ground, and people would just be applauding. And we'd get off the air, and we were like, really? Like, this is this interesting to people, where they're finding this comical. And we were brutal sometimes, and other times we weren't as brutal. But then we didn't really have a stable, in the sense of, we were maybe a conduit, but we were fortunate enough to have all these wonderful folks who kept coming into the fold and just being a team accidentally. We were kind of like the Replacements, where all of a sudden we just had a network unofficially of these awesome folks that, hey, can you get Lonnie next week? Or can you do this? Or can you do that? And I can remember if somebody would call me and say, hey, I need somebody for Tuesday night, I'd pick up the phone and call 15 different people.
Right.
Because that same person was doing the same thing for me. I mean, Tammy J Tamara Jackson, when she was broadcasting, the people she would get for guests were unbelievable. I don't know how she did it.
I still don't know how she got the people that she got. She got great authors,
but that's
writers,
Liz
all sorts
Loris,
of folks.
That's how I met Liz Loris, and Liz is how we met Chris Parento. And so that's how it was working for the longest time. We didn't have, websites like Fox or any of these other people. We didn't have that ability to even cut through with social media. If everyone knows social media is pay to play. If you have money, you can have a bazillion followers. Same thing on Facebook, Twitter, all the other ones. We didn't have that. So when we had at one point 6,000, 7,000 followers, it was because I was sitting there every single day retweeting, following,
hammering the social media.
Yep, and Lonnie retweeting Lonnie, and Lonnie would retweet us, and then we'd do this, and then we'd do, and you would just grind at it.
You got to be on top of that stuff,
and that would also lead to other folks that we met. Mike and Shannon, right?
Oh yeah,
who still occasionally broadcast with us and have for a long time. They came out to Freedom Fest, all this other stuff. So that brings us up, and I've stepped forward a little bit. So that brings us up to the point where we have a studio, we have a network, we have branding, we have all of these other things. And the studio was set up differently before, but we were in the old setup for the studio. And I'm on social media one day, and I see this old bastard who is talking about being a retired sheriff, and
that was on Twitter.
That was on Twitter.
I found you guys on Twitter.
Bloviating Zeppelin. And I saw a couple of his posts, and I forget, somebody in my circle retweeted it years and years and years ago. And I read the article, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm retweeting this. And I retweeted it, and then I started to look at yours, and I said, oh, old retired cop with nothing better to do. Let's see how we can abuse him. And
I'm sure that went through your brain. I'm certain of it.
And into the mix, BZ came. BZ and I had coffee at the Starbucks, or I had coffee. He just talked at the Starbucks, not too far from here.
Right. That was on Stockton Boulevard. Now, can I tell him what actually happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, nobody knows, but I hate going downtown to to downtown Sacramento.
And I didn't know this.
I abso-fucking-lutely hate going to the downtown area. Well, this Starbucks wasn't exactly downtown per se.
Pretty close.
But it's really, really close. It's a really busy area. And the reason I hate going downtown is because it's a fuck nozzle, asshole problem time to try to find a damn parking place. So, and I didn't know where that Starbucks was. I had to go find it. So I drove by on Stockton Boulevard, and I'd never been there before, and it's got like 2.5 parking places in the front.
Tiny.
That's it. One of them is a handicapped.
Yes.
So there's only really 2 spaces to park in front of the damn Starbucks.
Yep.
So then I start looking all around. And then I had one street. Then there's a street right next to the Starbucks. Then there's another street that splits off from the street that splits off from Starbucks. So that's where I parked the car. Well, one of the reasons that I hate going downtown is every fucking time I go downtown, I get a ticket. So I talked to you.
Yes.
At the Starbucks.
Yes.
And we hit it off pretty well. And
right off the bat.
And you said, why don't you come into the studio, but first let me check with Big Nose to see.
Which is probably a direct quote.
I think it was. to see if that would be okay with him. So we shook hands. We had a good time, and that's kind of how the friendship began right there. So, okay, fine. It's time to walk back to my car, and there on the windshield is a motherfucking ticket.
So it cost him money just to have the meeting.
It cost me $35 just to meet with Sackhead Shaun for the first damn time.
Hey, $35 problem. For a $5 meeting.
Another reason why I hate going downtown in Sacramento.
Well, and so I remember it clearly. I was coming from work, and we were looking at, and we had a network at that time. We had regular people, we had regular time slots, and we had a lot of people on at the time. And we needed somebody to start to regularly fill the gap for the 2 hours before our show, because Joe was on earlier. Then it was 2 hours, and Sackheads was coming on. We were looking for somebody to do 5 days a week. So I said, this would be great. How much can you do? And you mumbled something about Geritol and not sure. So
Right. And I'll get back to you when I can remember.
I can get back to you at some point when the nurse tells me I can. So then what ended up happening is you came in the studio a few times, and we started putting a mic in front of you. Just because it was
on account of because
pick on the old bastard night,
right?
Became every Sackhead show.
Yeah, every Wednesday night. I started Bigfooting the crap out of your show. Do you want to hear what it sounds like?
What?
This was my very first time.
Oh, no kidding!
On the show. This is a Sackheads radio show from June 22nd of 2016. So this is what it sounded like on the intro with you two guys.
Late night conservative talk show.
Wow.
Remember that?
Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Shaun and Sackhead Clan. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Radio.
Okay, I heard the radio thing. What is that? I said this again. It sounds like he's saying heart, 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 too.
Sackheads.
It sounds like heart, 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 too.
No, it's
how do
just,
you get sackheads
I hear
out
it just
of that?
fine every time. I've always heard it fine.
Radio.
Okay, people in chat, does it sound to you like heart, 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 2?
No.
Or does it sound like Sackheads?
It's Sackheads.
Heart, 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 2. Come on.
So what most people don't know is Sacco did all of the instruments on that and all of the editing. He
did the production.
Everything, front to back. All of that was him.
See, I had to step out for a little bit. But when I say that I don't have a producer, and it's, that's a thing of this, because I don't have a producer. You fuckers had a producer at one time. So all you guys had to do was sit in chairs in front of mics, and Sacco sat over there in the corner.
Yeah, and we
produced everything.
We used to call it the gorilla position, which is a takeoff from wrestling. He was in the gorilla position. And he was originally. I used to sit where you are now. Clint would sit here. The desk was across the room, and we would just talk. And we would just talk and just talk.
How cool would that be?
Commercial. Now, here's the other thing: is Sacco worked like 90 hours a week. He worked a lot, and the kid used to hustle. And then he would come here and produce for us. Do you know how many times Sacco fell asleep halfway through a show, and I would have to go over and put us into commercial and then wake him up? We left one time. Sacco laid on the floor. He was so tired. We had finished the show, and we were doing some post-production stuff and doing some recordings for some stingers and stuff. And we were sitting here, and Clint and I were talking about next week. And Clint and I used to have regular production meetings about what was going to go on. Like, I know everyone used to listen to the show and just think that we were making shit up half the time and just being crazy. But we used to actually produce our show. And we looked down, and Sacco was snoring, laying on the floor. He got so bored with listening to us tell stupid jokes and research stuff. And then we went to wake him up, and we all obviously have keys to our studio. He just said, "Just leave me here. I'll leave when I'm done." And we left him sleeping on the floor of the studio. His head on his jacket.
This studio?
Yeah, right here on the floor.
Okay. Well, that's not bad because people don't know it's carpeted.
It's
in here,
carpeted.
So it's not like he was sleeping on concrete.
On the concrete floor of the Black Widow studio. But yeah, so we had a full setup. And when you came in, Sacco had just departed recently. And I had started to take over producing.
And then that's when you realized this old fucker, he can't produce.
Yeah,
he ain't going to be another Sacco.
I said, well, I have two choices I can do with him. Have him constantly break the equipment, or I'll switch spots with him and just give him a microphone and he can yak.
Push him over to the side over here.
And I can do all of the production stuff during the show, before the show, after the show, and social media and show research and try to book guests.
Right. And tonight.
And then do it all tonight.
Right. Okay, folks, let's go back to last Thursday when I had Terrence McCauley on. If anybody remembers who was listening, let's see, Facebook stopped after an hour.
Yeah.
Actually, 42 minutes. And then YouTube stopped after 51 minutes. And then Spreaker was kind of in and out
the whole time.
And we discovered that one of the reasons is because that blue cable that's over there, the internet was going up and going down.
The cable was taking a dump.
And so tonight, when we were having trouble with XSplit, you put a cable in from the connector from Comcast directly into the magic box over there, and that's how we're running things tonight. So...
Well, and so you give me crap about, you fuckers had a producer. You have to understand something. When I took over the production...
Well, you fuckers did have a producer.
When I took over production, what did we start doing? Video?
We did. Yes,
right?
we did.
We changed to a new board. We changed to our not XSplit. No, we were just starting with the XSplit.
Yeah, you done something else.
Spreaker was relatively new to us too. It was only about a year old. And then I had a couple other outlets. So I had to learn all of that. I also had to learn to build intros and outros on Spreaker. I'd never done video production before. And Lonnie, this tells you how miserable my life was at the time. I had to do that. I had an infant at home. Infant, like newborn infant. And I had two infants in the studio.
Hey!
One of them was a geriatric infant. It was like Benjamin Buttons.
Jesus.
And then one with a huge nose. And what would happen is I would be in the corner sweating, trying to make everything constantly working, adjusting sounds, because what people don't know with Sackhead Clint. Sackhead Clint will do a quarter of the show from back here. Half the show right here. and then sometimes here. But if he got really excited really fast, he'd go right up on the mic and start yelling.
That's right. And then he'd pound the desk.
And then, right? So I was constantly with my finger on his slider adjusting his gain.
God, I'd forgotten about that.
Because he would, and if he got going, he didn't realize he'd do it. He'd start hitting the mic.
Oh, he did.
You couldn't even hear. The old mic stands were loud. They would twang, and you could hear them everywhere.
Oh, because there
right?
were springs on them.
They were spring-loaded ones, right? These are not. They're internal springs. But Clint would start slamming stuff when he'd get excited. And you know, Clint, it doesn't take a lot to get him
not
excited.
at all.
And so I would be over there with the gain up, gain down. And, of course, I'm listening in my headphones. I'm listening to the delay version that goes out and trying to stay into the conversation with what's happening now. So I have one ear off, one ear on. I have the delay, so I'm getting the gain and I'm getting all the mix as it's going out. But I'm still trying to talk and be a part of the intelligent conversation sometimes that was going on in that room and make fun of you somehow. Right, so
that wasn't that difficult.
That wasn't hard, but that was what 2.5 years I was doing that.
Yeah, I'd say
2.5 years.
Guys, I don't think I should probably even bring up.
No,
my experience.
No,
in the studio. You guys will hate my guts.
What, the one where you just get to go in and sit down and open up your notes and start?
Yeah.
You know, like
took care of all
like
of
real radio.
But when he was saying, Lonnie, just like you were just saying you had a producer, he was saying, I don't have a producer. No, you had one for 2.5 years.
He just never gave you any props.
Just never understood that.
Shame.
Yes.
Shame.
Okay.
And then, wait, on top of it all, on top of producing all of that,
right.
Who had to train you to use all of this other software on your lonesome?
Guys,
I know who it wasn't.
My producer's name was Sherry, and she was a George Patton personality type, and she would whoop up on my guests before they come on air. We would be so intimidating we're going to screw up. She got through chewing us out before we even go on air. Where'd you find her? And then Kenneth McClinton got so fell in love with her and was trying to steal her from me to come be a producer on his show.
Oh, she'd have killed him.
Ken is in chat, I think.
Yeah, Kenneth's going to send me chocolates or something because her thing was chocolate. And he's trying to find out from me what kind of chocolate she likes. But I'm not telling you what kind. She only eats one kind, and I'm not telling you.
Yeah, like you need her stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to thefted her. Well, Alaskan is in chat, Mike's in chat, Sergeant Booker's in chat, Jack Alexander is in chat, and Ken McClinton is
Ken,
in
good evening,
chat.
sir. But Lonnie, you know, though, just from doing radio for a long time, going into the production and sound engineer during a show is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And you know, I used to give Sacco hell for not doing anything because he didn't talk on the air until I had to do it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, God, how did he keep up with half this stuff? But he was also far more intelligent than I was, so it was easier for him. And then I did the impossible, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
What?
I taught the oldest dog new tricks. I taught BZ how to make the sound go on. I taught him how to digitally edit audio, how to video produce, how to upload all of this stuff. When BZ came to us, he could just use a website that was a plug-and-play website.
Right.
Hey, that was pretty good.
I'm just trying to set a baseline.
Wait a minute, Sean. I feel your pain because if I remember correctly, I'm in studio there with you gentlemen one time, and I look and I see a box on the floor underneath his desk of state-of-the-art radio and podcasting equipment, still brand new in the box, unused.
Some of it.
And he's like, no, I like this. I understand how this works.
So I can't go to the new one.
There. I don't want.
The Roadcaster.
Well, nobody's
State-of-the-art.
perfect. Okay, all right. So I have a brand new $1,200 Rode Procaster.
Oh, it's gorgeous,
under
too.
the desk somewhere that I haven't hooked up because I know how to run this shit over here. I paid for the Arrakis board over here, so I know how to make that go. Don't confuse me.
Lonnie, if you could see into the closet behind me.
Okay. So I have that. I have
all
that.
the different things where BZ was like, hey, what can we do to make this production easier? Why don't we get one of these? Okay, BZ gets one of those. We try to incorporate it, and he goes, nah, I don't like it. And then we'll put it back in the box and put it away. How many things, BZ?
I do have that rack-mounted equalizer, that little thin equalizer thing that hooks up
That's
to
still there?
microphones. I couldn't figure out how to make that go.
We have that. We have a phantom power booster. We have cough interrupters. For the video, we had the channel.
Oh, that's
changer.
that's how Channel 5 got screwed up.
Was the what?
The power booster.
Yes. Yep. We've tried all of these different things, and every single time we get it, it shows up. I learn how to use it. I set it up. I spend time. Give it to the old man, and the old man goes, "Yeah, not so much with this one."
Oh, and let's not forget the time that I killed the headphone amp.
Yeah, he did kill the headphone.
I did kill the headphone amp. So here I was, sitting down in front of this board, and you had been listening to something else before the show.
Yes.
You'd been listening to YouTube or whatever the hell it was.
Something, I forget.
And so this channel over here, PC USB, is open. And it's wide open. So I set up all my little, I've got all these little dits on the board that are green for input that I want to use. And then for whatever reason I decide, okay, I'm gonna make sure all this stuff works. And then I started to play an audio cut, not realizing that channel was open. And it just went.
Oh, you got the reverb.
The reverb, it blew out my ears. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the contributing factors to my being almost deaf now.
Yeah, we won't add the how many years as a firearms instructor?
A few.
Okay. Yeah, we won't talk about that. We won't talk about Evoc. I mean, the loud screeching, how many years?
A few.
Okay. Let's take the half a second that you got reverb in the
that I
air.
went to, the Yes concerts, the Led Zeppelin concerts, the Slade concerts,
Rush,
the Gentle Giant concerts, the Rush concerts, standing in front of the stacks for Rod Stewart and Faces.
Yeah, reverb.
Yeah, standing in front of the stacks for T-Rex.
Now that everybody understands what I deal with on a regular basis, it must be the reverb.
So the reverb on this one channel, it blew out. It blew out the headphone amp right here.
Yep.
And we couldn't make the headphones go.
And for whatever reason, these have a limiter and a cutout. They will, if you start to overdrive the sound gain, it should cut out, and it didn't. Which I still to this day cannot figure out how that didn't trip.
I don't know, but it
Busy
also
did
it killed the entire amp. This is a brand new headphone amp down here. And I think it slayed one of our headphone sets.
It burnt everything.
One of our cans just died.
I was proud of you. I have never seen somebody fuck up so bad that it would just destroy everything. But
hey, I'm reminded of remember years ago the cartoon that went around.
I got to be proud of something.
Before the days of the internet and memes, and it was a cartoon depicting a medieval king. And he's in an epic battle against another kingdom, and they're flinging spears and arrows and catapults at each other. And in the background, you see that there's a guy who's trying to get the king's attention. And he says, and the king says, "I don't have time to talk to any pesky salesman. I've got a battle to fight and a war to win." Well, the salesman was trying to sell him a Gatling gun.
That's BZ.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is 100% BZ.
Yeah. Don't try to mess with me. I'm busy doing stuff that is only important to me, okay?
And some great things that we've done for the studio. We did 3 different elections from here, 2 midterms and 1.
Oh. The 2016 election coverage in here.
Yes.
We were on top of that. We continued till 2, 3 a.m.?
Well, if I remember right, we talked to Lonnie. I think we talked to you that night.
I believe so.
And it was after 2 a.m. your time, because I can remember you, I think, through text, or maybe it was like one of the Facebook chats or whatever, going, it's 2 a.m., guys. I got to go. And we were like, oh, is that all? And it was 11 here, and we still were trying to figure out what was going on.
Oh, yeah. But
man,
then...
that night, I couldn't. There was so much anxiety that I would turn the TV on and watch it.
God, yeah.
And the anxiety would drive me. I had to turn the TV off, and then I turn it back on an hour later. I went through that rest of the night.
Oh, gosh.
It was an absolute nail-biter, and then piece by piece, brick by brick, kind of got chipped off, and then we were watching all the commentators on the left who were just absolutely ebullient that Hillary Clinton was winning,
yes.
and then some little wind got knocked out of
I
their
can remember looking around the room at us, and as Florida came in and Ohio came in.
It was
late,
Florida and Ohio.
and it was late. And I can remember me, you, and Clint kind of looking at each other going, did this really happen?
Is this possible now?
And we're all talking, and Lonnie, we'll tell you a little inside baseball. If you haven't hosted a show, one of the things you get really good at is talking about a subject and communicating with somebody else off air or off camera about something different.
Right.
And it's this weird thing that you just develop. Like, we're constantly, even on camera, BZ and I will communicate either a look or I'll hold up a sign or something.
Right.
You find a way. Clint and I used to do it all the time. We had a notebook between us that we'd write stuff down as we were talking and slide it across the table. And that was one of those nights where the next day, the amount of little notes that were all over the floor of the studio from me writing something down and shoving it across, and the notebook was over there, and we kept rotating out.
Oh, everything was all over the place.
I mean,
it was grand.
We had 3 TVs in here that night. They were all on different channels. We had notebooks. It looked like
an actual newsroom.
And we couldn't keep up because once Florida hit, and I can remember Jersey Joe texting me before Florida got announced and saying,
because he's in Florida,
and saying, I think he got Florida. And I said, no. So then, of course, I send Clint a message, and I think I was texting him at that point, hey, Trump may have gotten Florida. And I can remember he was over here. He wasn't on air. I think you were on air by yourself at the time, just kind of carrying that 10-minute gap while we were trying to figure out what was what. And I can remember Clint looking over at me, because we did the little temporary studio in the middle of the floor over here, and going, there's no fucking way he got Florida like that, because all the numbers we were seeing made it seem impossible. And all of a sudden, it came over, and I forget, I think it came over Fox first, where you got the little on the runner, you got the little Fox News alert, and he looked at me and he looked at you, and I can remember your face because you stopped talking midway through what you were saying, and you were staring at the TV.
I do not disbelieve you at all.
And
I don't remember.
I can remember
obviously,
saying, don't say it yet, because we don't know for sure.
So my mouth was open, basically.
You were just agape and staring. And then you kind of picked up where you were, and I started checking like the 5 or 6 different poll websites and numbers websites. And all of a sudden, bing, 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 they all started to follow suit. And that's where we're like, oh, shit, we got to get it back on the air as a group because this is huge. And that started like turning that corner because we were tired. We'd started
we thought we were going to have to wrap all this up.
And we'd been going at about 6 hours at that point. From the time we went live, we had pre-production that we were working all day on, and here it is midnight our time, and we're like, shit. This just changed everything. And that's when, right around then is when Podesta came out and talked to the Hillary group saying, oh, we don't know anything till the morning. And I think Clint turned around and said, Trump won.
That's it.
Yep. As soon as he came out, he couldn't send them home. And he wouldn't, and she didn't come out.
And you know for a fact she was in the back,
losing her mind,
blasted out of her mind,
losing her mind. So that was one of the many fun times that we had in the studio. We've had numerous guests come through. I think a lot of people very shocked when they first come in, that it's not like Mom's basement.
No, and I used to keep emphasizing that. You know what I didn't do? Let's continue with this, because this dates back to 2016.
Oh, goodness.
And then you're going to open it up, and Clint is going to open it up, and I'm not saying a thing.
Do we just do the typical hi? Hi.
Pretty much.
That's how we started every show. Hi.
And
Hi.
welcome to the Sackheads Radio Show on the 22nd of June, 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
There it is.
To the amazing Wednesday afternoon lineup we have here on SHR Media.
Oh,
you know, on Wednesdays,
again, I misspoke.
we now have Dan Butcher, who's starting our afternoon off.
Danny.
With
Who's back
Agador.
with Danny?
And then we have just everybody. Our entire Wednesday afternoon lineup, all live, jamming. I mean, we're just jamming here.
Jamming.
It's pretty impressive. So thank you so much to everybody. And thank you, Clint.
You're welcome, Sean.
For actually making it here in time.
You're welcome. You know what?
All right, stop it for a second.
And
Because your listeners may not know all of this. Clint had the worst habit of walking in the door 30 seconds before the show.
This is the second one of these.
Where he would throw a whole bunch of notes on the table, plop down on the chair, and be like, all right, what are we talking about? As the intro was going.
Yeah.
Now, to his credit, we'd have been texting all day, calling each other like, hey, this is what we want to do tonight. Like, we had an idea going into it. But pre-production for a show, Lonnie, how early did you get to the studio for a show?
Oh, guys, you're gonna find me out here. I used to have, and I'm hoping to get him under your show. BZ is a good friend of mine, Pastor Mark Little, who is a entertainment attorney by his, what he does for a living to make money. But he's also a pastor. And so he's one of these meticulous type guys that has to have everything lined out. He knows what we're talking about, what questions are you going to ask me, all that kind of stuff. And so I go, so the first time he came on my show, it was a great interview, and his dad is the NFL great who recently passed, Floyd Little for the Denver Broncos.
Oh, that was his dad.
Yes.
Floyd, wasn't Floyd Little a running back?
Yeah, he's running back. That's right.
A great RB for the Bronx. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm going to get him to come on your show. So, but anyway, what we used to do to mess with him, because I learned that he's that meticulous like that, I would call him.
You're brutal.
30 minutes before showtime.
You're brutal. I can already see. Go ahead.
Emergency, man. I can't do the show. I need to do the show for me.
Oh.
So watch him freak out. And then he says, man, you realize all the prep time and everything it takes to do a show. I mean, how much time do you take to prep for a show? I said, prep?
Prep?
Yeah.
Question mark, comma, what's that?
My producer, she finally figured out that, Sherry, she said, you don't prep, do you? I said, no, I have an idea what I want to talk about based on what I saw earlier in the day or the previous days. and I might jot down 2 or 3 bullet points. There ain't no prep. So any of the guests that would come on my show, they would send me all these questions and stuff like that. I'd look at the list and, we might talk about it, we might not. Usually we didn't, but it made for great radio. Not everybody can do that, but that's how I roll.
We had
everybody's got their style.
And actually, it was the same district that Byron Donalds is from, and we had Byron on when he was running for state office 4 or 6 years ago. But we had, for that campaign, we had everybody who was running for the primary, and this is in the old studio that we were doing recordings, and then we kind of mashed it all together and put it on air.
Sure.
And we had our standardized list of questions that we said, all right, we'll ask every candidate these 5. They'll all get these to start. And then we're just going to wing shit at you.
Yep.
And none of the candidates, except for Byron, if I remember right, had an issue with it. And there was one guy who was calling himself a conservative in Florida who believed in gun control. And he, and I will take full credit for this, after we did, and we got our interviews are getting downloaded a lot in Florida, a lot, because we can see where they're being downloaded, and it spiked after we did all these interviews. That guy never did another interview again and dropped out of the race a week later, and we were so proud of ourselves. We were so proud of ourselves.
You guys should feel bad.
You're
for
conservative
ruining
for
that
gun
guy's
control?
life.
No.
A week later, boom, he's dead. 44 mag to the head.
Gun controls 2 hands. Gun controls 2 hands.
God, poor bastard.
So we absolutely crushed that. But I remember little things like that, and then we'd have somebody on and be like, "All right, we're just not going to ask any questions from a list. We're just going to see what happens." Dan Butcher was the best at that. He would come on completely blind, and we would just throw crap at him. The problem is with Dan, it was really hard because he read news all day. That was his job. So I started doing, for a joke here and there, I'd start pulling up weird news articles from all over the world, just bizarre, the most bizarre shit I could find.
Cow gives birth to porpoise.
Yes, anything like that. And then what would happen was anytime Dan was going to co-host with me, make an appearance, co-host with you or whatever, he would send me 5 or 6 links to all these whiz-bang crazy screwball friggin' stories as I was on the air. So he's watching my reaction as I'm reading them come across. And I always thought that was a brilliant power play from Dan. Ken used to come on back in the day.
You used Ken.
Yes.
I
don't even know what you're going to say, but the answer is yes.
You used Ken you beat him like a big bass drum.
Yes.
Isn't that right, Ken
100%.
McClinton? Didn't he beat you, Ken McClinton, like a big bass drum all the time? That sackhead Shaun.
Yes.
I want you to know I have never received a beating like that in my entire
There
life,
it is.
and it was so worth it.
There it
so
is.
worth it.
And I knew
What? See? What did I tell you?
I was just about to say no. It was nobody knows. Oh, I got to tell this story. Ken, how are you, sir?
Well, and you, Shaun.
Oh,
it is
God.
so good hearing your voice.
It is
man.
so
Love you,
wonderful.
brother.
I love you, too. It is so wonderful to hear your voice. Ken called in one night. This is back in the Blog Talk day. Ken, do you remember the name you used?
Do I want to hear this?
He was notorious for that kind of stuff.
It was.
I can't remember.
It was like Dazzling Star or something like that. And what most people, we didn't out it. Oh gosh, Ken, how many? We probably went a couple months where you would call in as her or Foxy Cleopatra. You were a prostitute at one point. You had these 4 or 5 characters that we would just play off of. I'd be like, oh, you tell Clint on the side, oh, Ken's calling and he's going to be on the next, I'd slide him the thing and he was like, oh, okay, because we weren't on video. So and all of a sudden, we'd pick up the phone, we'd be like, hey, you're on the air with the Sackheads. And you'd hear, hi, I've been having a problem. And almost like we were like a Dr. Drew show, right? We're talking politics. And he would come in with the most batshit crazy stuff. And we had tears coming out of our eyes. And for the longest time, we would try to play the straight man with it, right? Like, he's obviously goofing, but we'd be like, well, what have you done about that? And thank goodness we didn't have video, because we would have tears.
Oh, right. Yeah, that kind of kills it.
And I'd have to cut Ken off because I'd start giggling and I was done. And I'd be like, all right, well, we got to go. And we'd hang up on him. And then Ken would call in like a minute and a half later and be like, hey, guys, it's Ken. Who is that weird person you had on? Right? It was brutal to try to keep a straight face with that.
He was notorious for that kind of foolishness. He used to do that on my show. He would go into the chat room and stir everybody up in the chat room. And I'm like, who is this? He comes in as an atheist that only like, I don't know, tuna fish sandwiches or whatever it was.
What?
And I'm looking here and I'm going, Kenneth McClinton. I called him out.
It had to be Ken. Hey, Ken, do you?
I am so mad with Shaun because he got my wife, Mrs. Biggs, to out me. What Shaun said, Ken, you must be on Ritalin, and my wife went, finally someone said it.
well, Mrs. Biggs and I happen to go way back, and I know for a fact I'm her favorite.
Yeah, I know. You are.
Woman I loved dearly, dearly, dearly. Oh, goodness. But it was one of those things with Ken. Ken, do you remember the guy who, when we were all on Blog Talk back in the day, and I don't know how much you heard of that earlier, do you remember the liberal who used to call all of our shows and try to fight with us? And it was like,
yes, I do.
It was like Liberal Steve or Liberal Dan. And I was just saying that, like, as we started to all kind of get to know each other off air and be like, hey, has this guy ever called with you and fought with you? And everybody be like, yes, he is such a pain in the ass.
Time.
And if you'd hang up on him because you were done, he'd be on the line 13 seconds later, calling back. Literally, like, you guys, I think we got disconnected. It was like, no, I hung up on you. That's why I said goodbye.
Purpose, dude.
Click, And it was just insane. Oh, man.
I'm going to tell you, there was one time that I called in and you all were not suspecting that I was going to do the character, but I did the character of the pimp.
Yeah.
Speaking in Black Ebonics.
Oh, God. And your name was like Pinky something. It was some Detroit 70s pimp name. Like, literally, you could hear the goldfish swimming through his clear platform shoes. Like, it was straight out of I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker.
That's a great visual.
Oh, it was just... And for the first 5 minutes...
You never bought me shows like that.
No, I did not. He came with his own, though. God. But for the first 5 minutes, and a little inside baseball, because I think that's fun for people who don't know. When you have a caller and you don't know who it is, and they start going off on a tangent...
And we never do, because we don't have professional phone systems.
Right. And when they
screeners.
When they start going on a tangent that you don't want to go down, and you keep trying to drag them back to the street from the alley that they're walking down verbally, and all they're doing is now running faster down this crazy conversation.
Stop.
And then you turn into, okay, well, if we can't be serious with this guy, how much screwy can we get with him? The problem is Ken called the show, and he was already on a sprint down the alley that night. That night with the pimp voice, he wasn't starting to walk down that alley. He was like, hey, man, I was just out here from the time I said, hey, you're on the air with Sackheads Radio, he was just going a mile a minute, wouldn't let us get a word in edgewise. And me and Clint were both like, and Clint's looking at me, and I'm looking at him because Ken, Blog Talk Radio would show the phone number. Ken would mask his, unless he was calling as Ken. The problem is he wasn't the only person who had masked numbers, so you would get a lot of 9 numbers, 999-999-9999, or zeros. Were they zeros back then, Ken, or were they still 9s?
They were 9.
They were 9s. So we used to call it the 9 number. You get a 9 number, and you're like, well, this could be something either great or, which happened a few times, full-blown crackheads who were just calling to talk about anything.
God, how come crackheads don't call me? I feel left out.
It was great. I'll tell you.
Crackheads call us now.
There was a few times the comedy was great.
You guys should have been called Crackheads Radio.
Ken, we thought, was a crackhead that night. And... when I tell you he was running down that alley, and as a host, you're trying to keep him on the street, right? Trying to keep us on Conversation Street. Let's stay on Conversation Street. Let's talk on Conversation Street. Oh, no. Son of a bitch was hauling ass down Crazy Alley, And he was slapping all the street cats on the way and dragging hookers.
He was the first guy throwing rocks at hookers.
He was
wasn't
the first, metaphorically, yes.
There you go.
And
that's where
Clint and I kept looking at each other and like, should we hang up because this could get really good? On the other hand, we're trying to do politics, and there ain't nothing political about this whatsoever.
But he was entertaining.
But the little boys in us that want to screw with him and laugh.
And you're probably putting placards, the standard Ken Rove dry erase boards going, let him go. Let him go.
Let him go. Well, and we were sitting right next to each other, no video. So I'm like pointing, and I'd give like the little X fingers, like, do we hang up on him? He's like, no, let's see where this would go.
He's going somewhere.
Okay, let's go. And it was about 9 to 10 minutes of just total insanity. I mean, total. If you take a Detroit pimp from the 70s, put him in, what was that, about 2015, and just pump him with as much methamphetamine as his little heart can take without exploding, that was Ken that night.
God, Ken.
And then just hung up out of the blue. That was the worst part about that, is because with crazy callers, if you've ever had one, they have a tendency to peter out at the end. They have a tendency to trickle and just kind of ease off into the sunset because their only crazy thought that they called about is over, and now they're just trying to have any lucid thought.
It's stream of consciousness.
It's just gone. So this was different, which is why at the end I had a suspicion, but it was just a mile a minute, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, well, I gotta go. I talked to you. I gotta go back with my host. Click. And listening back, there was about a minute of silence when Clint and I were like,
you're both trying to figure out, okay, what do we fill this with now?
What the fuck was that? What just happened? And I think I threw it right to commercial. I'm like, we're going to take a break.
We'll be right back.
And I was smoking at the time. Like, we're going to take a break. I'll be right back. And I used to be able to go smoke outside the studio. Stepped outside the studio, and I lit a cigarette, and I had this little, like, nice place that I could just lean and just watch the traffic and everything. And Clint came outside, and he was like, why do we do this show? Like, that was like, I remember, like, that was the first time he questioned why we were doing this.
Ken, you did that. Ken, you little minx, you did that.
And he was like, are we going to do just crazy people, or are we just going to do politics? But we can't keep doing politics and crazy people. And we kept doing politics and crazy people for the end of time.
Because why
not? But that was one of the funniest damn things. One of my favorite times with SHR and obviously Sackheads was the Freedom Fests. We had such a blast.
Oh God,
Fest. Just such a good time.
Oh, the drugs that we did there.
Oh man,
wow.
Copious amounts. Hey, you know what?
What we discovered is that the heroin that we had put Ken to sleep.
All the time. Every time you looked at him, if he wasn't interviewing somebody, he was napping.
He was asleep.
Yes, he was napping. He couldn't stay because the heroin.
Yeah, we had high-grade, good shit. He wanted to take some back to D.C. We said he damn near used up our entire supply after 3 days.
Most people don't know this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sending Stacey Dash to the room.
Yes, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
I made her conservative.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me that Ken's main addiction is not just root beer?
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, wait a minute. Root beer is serious.
See, you didn't hear Ken back then. Anytime we could tell when Ken was getting close because we could hear the clanking of the spoons in his coat pocket. Well, it's Ken. Oh, pop out the baggie. Here's Ken. Anybody got a lighter? I got a lighter. Do you have a lighter?
Lonnie, let me set this up for you, and I just want you to picture this. Lieutenant Colonel West, Chris Peranto.
Oh, yeah.
They have been trying to meet each other ever since Benghazi happened. And at the time, Lieutenant Colonel West was in Congress. And I was doing my live show out of Philly, and we were doing the remote in Vegas, and we had Chris on. Lieutenant Colonel West walked by, and they recognized each other, and we, obviously, put a set of headphones and a microphone, right? Lieutenant Colonel West, here you go. You guys just talk. We're just going to sit down and shut up. And that's when Ken decided that he was going to ask Chris Peranto for a bump of heroin. Now,
But he qualified it though. He said just a small one.
Well, I think what he said is, hey, if you're giving out drugs
trying to be rude.
I think what he said was, if you're giving out drugs to black guys, I'll take some.
Sure.
Because Lieutenant Colonel West, he thought that's what was going on. So after we clarified that, it worked out fine. But we had so much fun, and even as a network and as a studio. And Ken, I'm sure you heard earlier we were talking about the groups of people that we've been able to meet through this, and the friends that we have made through this,
God.
and the network. And
having drinks with Forbes.
Yeah, having drinks with Forbes. George Foreman
was so cool. So there we were. We're in the corridor of, what was that, Planet Hollywood?
Yes.
Okay, we're in Planet Hollywood. We're just down from one of the major convention halls. And when people go by, when they go into this big convention hall or they get through, they go right by our booth.
Everybody,
including the speakers, the people that are going.
Couldn't go in without going by us, the poor bastards.
They go right by us. So when we see them, one of us would reach out and snag somebody.
We always had somebody on point. That was the agreement that weekend with everybody who was broadcasting with us.
If you're not talking, you're grabbing.
Yep. If you didn't have somebody to interview, you were standing up. And the booth, the ship was never abandoned. There was always somebody there.
Yep.
And so we got Steve Forbes.
Tell the Steve Forbes story, because you grabbed him. I'm sitting in one of the chairs.
Booze.
I don't remember who was sitting in the other one.
We were hanging out with Weston Galls, the gal who does the Money Show. I can't think of her last name right now. The tall redheaded gal, and her producer. They were right next to us. So Wagon Halls.
You're right. I think it is Wagon Halls.
Yes, it is. And we had said early in the week, because they were broadcasting near us, is, hey, we should do a bourbon night on the last night of Freedom Fest. We should do a bourbon tasting party. And a couple of her people and us, we all chipped in. We went out and got bourbon. And Clint stole the glasses. And not stole in the sense of...
just liberated them. He liberated them. That's all.
Yeah. He
liberated.
They never left the hotel. How's that? Heather Weganals. That was it, Heather. And yes. And we were sitting there having cocktails, and we were all having a cocktail. And we had been, I mean, when I tell you, folks, if you ever saw on our Spreaker feed the amount of interviews that were done by SHR, not just me, not just BZ, as a group at these events, they were astronomical. It was nonstop. Everybody was always...
The chick that runs that sent an email to me this year
asking if we'd come back
and said, would you guys come back to Freedom Fest, because you did the best show of anyone there ever, including any and all professional broadcasters.
And she's not wrong. We did. We were awesome at it.
And we were dressed most of the time, Sean. We were actually...
Well, that's why we sit below a desk, and there's a skirt down to the floor in front of the desk so people can't see.
Look, in some cultures, being pantsless is considered dressed. Anyhow, and I won't talk about this again.
Belching after a meal is considered a courtesy. Not dressing below the waist is also considered a courtesy in many island nations.
See, there we go. So we knew Forbes was...
Well, in this culture, me being dressed to that particular level would always be a courtesy.
Yeah. In the sheet. We knew Forbes was on the air, and I was like, I wonder if they're going to him out this way, because a couple of the high profile
you're
guests,
standing right there in the hallway,
right?
Because you're scanning.
If you remember, that was the year Trump was there and announced that he was going to run later on in the year, but he spoke at that Freedom Fest. So he and a couple of the higher profile, Mike Lee, they were brought in through a second door that nobody else had access to. So I said, Steve didn't come in this way, but if he's coming out this way, I'm going to have a glass of bourbon waiting for him, and we're going to get him. And we were like, all right, that's our plan. So we had it set up. We had the guys kind of like sitting low, having a cocktail. Because I knew if we were just our typical screwball self, he would have probably looked at us really quick and went,
"You animals."
I don't know. I don't know if I want to get involved with that, because you can understand. You had you that looked like a homeless guy.
Sure. With a nice button-down shirt with lapels. You told me, I remember this, you told me if you wear a shirt that buttons up that has lapels.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We had the professor.
Yeah.
Who looks just like you, homeless guy.
People used to think that we were brothers.
Yes.
I was the overeater. He was the underachiever.
Yes.
Right.
And so we'd have these two guys sitting at the table. So it already looks like the ilk of Las Vegas has swooped in. And then you had the most, if you stood back from our booth, all joking aside, it was the strangest bedfellows of people because you had Clint and me, who were just loud and obnoxious and foul. You had Ken, who always had this big smile on his face and would say the most precious and gentle things when people around, and as soon as somebody would turn away, the things that would come out of his mouth would knock you over.
Despicable. And the breath. Oh my
horrible,
God.
horrible.
Like herring. Like 5 pounds of herring at the end of a hot dock on a wet day.
So then we all kind of communicate. We're like, all right, look, here's what we're going to do. Here's what blah, blah, blah. So I see Forbes coming down the hall, and I can remember, and I think it was actually Ken. I looked at Ken and said, give me the bourbon. And he grabbed the glass and he handed it to me.
And the big difference, I think, is wherever you found them, those were very nice glasses.
Yes. So we had 4 glasses that were super high-end snifters that I had procured through a little motivation for our brandy sipping contest that we never got to because Forbes was coming.
Liberated.
Whatever you want to call it. I swiped them. Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you right now, it was in one of the breakout rooms that was having a party. And I want to say it was...
Do you remember how we got the tables and the chairs?
And we borrowed them. Anyhow...
I went to another breakout room and stole all the chairs.
Well, and what people don't realize, we had the best spot on the row, but we only got 1 table. And we needed 4, minimally, for the amount of equipment we had.
Guess how many we got?
5. Because I think one of them never got set up. It just stayed behind our booth the whole time. We just didn't know where to put it. So... Forbes is coming down the hall, and I can remember walking to. He said, "Hey, Mr. Forbes." I said, "We're doing."
And he had a bodyguard.
He did have a bodyguard.
Who always had a bodyguard with him.
And the bodyguard obviously knew what he was doing because he didn't just like choke me out. I said, "Hey, you want to come? We're sipping bourbon over here. You want to have the bourbon and then do an interview with us about it?" And he said, "Sure." Look, just like that. Came over, sat down.
One of the coolest guys we've ever met. Off the cuff.
Yep. And what are we drinking? We talked about we were drinking for a few minutes. I got the sound going, and we did a quick interview, and he had a glass, and then he signed autographs for everybody. He signed, I have a Basil Hayden's box that he had signed. That we were drinking
your
that
bourbon,
night.
I don't remember what it was, but
Basil
your bourbon
Hayden's.
was so high-end that it had it. That's hell, I would have paid money just to have the box.
Yeah, I still have the box in storage. Absolutely do, with his signature on it. And then George Foreman was an hour after that. We had George Foreman that night, too. So we had Freedom Fest was just a blast.
I'm gonna tell you, I shook George Foreman's hand, and my entire arm
disappeared
within his palm.
Oh yeah,
he had huge. Oh my God, they are huge hands, and I mean, if he had hit me in the first round, I would have went down just by the wind of it. You know what I'm saying?
You don't realize how big George Foreman is until you walk up to George Foreman, and he
had hands the size of Buicks.
Well, and the smile is so off-putting because it kind of misrepresents how huge he is as a human being. Because his smile is huge, right? And he is
low-key,
so sweet, so kind.
Just a nice
He's literally
voice.
Everyone has that one friend who's always happy to see everybody.
Yeah.
And that was George Foreman. You could just tell. He was just a happy person. He was happy to speak and talk to people and touch people. Really great dude. But as he got, I can remember it was like a bad cartoon where like the closer he got and the bigger he got. And then you'd look down the hallway and he was still coming, but he was getting bigger and bigger.
And then you look like a new art student, you're thinking, what the fuck is going on with this perspective? My perspective is way off.
One of the pictures I had was I was standing next to George Foreman, who was sitting, and it looked like he was taller than I was.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. He's not big, tall, basketball size, but he's just such a large man that he's just big. Mm-hmm. I don't know how else to describe it.
But I must say, you recruited Steve Forbes.
Yes.
Then you sent me over before Steve Forbes came and asked me to invite Don King over.
Yes.
Oh, and right.
I gave you all that look after I shook his hand and started talking to him for 3 minutes. Like, why the hell did you do this? Hey, listening to Don King, you don't know what planet he's on, how long he's been there, what he's smoking.
We did send you,
but his hair is excited.
And
all
I'll
the
be
time.
the first one to admit we said, "Hey Ken, you got to go do this because you're black."
Of course, who else? You're not going to send me over there. We're not going to send you over there. We're not going to send Clint over there. Hell no.
And Ken, you will absolutely agree with this. This was I just want to see if they'll actually talk to us moment. Because he was.
What do we got to lose? We're already at no.
We couldn't figure out why Don King was there anyhow. Like he was one of the weird people, right? He wasn't there.
I'm sure he's a libertarian.
Right. And he wasn't, there was no business. There was no free market aspect. We could not figure out what he was doing there. And we wanted to.
I'm just so happy to be here in the same situation as you are in this studying his understanding of being in the ring. And so we're going to win this for the victory that is to come. And I'm glad that you have come over and asked me to talk to you. You are talking to me, right? And I'm glad you were talking to each other. What's your name again?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
Hey, guys, Don King was at the 2016 GOP convention in Cleveland. And
is he a conservative?
Yeah, so I think he's like you're saying, maybe more libertarian. He certainly was there, and he was doing interviews on Media Row.
That's insane.
Sure
I just didn't see that coming.
Well, I didn't either. I said there's nobody but Don King that certain look, and he had on a denim. He's got this denim Levi jacket that he wears that has American flags and stuff all over it.
That sounds like Don King.
Yep.
Well, and it was funny because that was literally the conversation going. It was, what is he even doing here? I don't know. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, Ken, guess what?
We invited him over. We invited Forbes over for bourbon, but we invited Don King over for Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Hey, that is, we offered him crack, too. It was Kool-Aid.
You told
me
I couldn't bring mine.
You couldn't. No, what I was told you is to pull your pants up. You were showing too much crack. Yeah.
Okay.
That was. It's not the same, BZ. It's not the same.
That's why you wouldn't let me stand up.
Sean, it wasn't a plumber's convention.
It was not a plumber's convention. So,
God.
But we.
I want you to know, BZ. I want you to know, it was enough crack for me.
Starry.
Thank you.
Oh, Starry.
God loves a cheerful giver. Thank you.
Oh. No, it was Monique. Oh, I'm trying to remember, Ken. It was like Monique something or Mahogany. I can't remember what name you had.
I had a stripper named Glossy Coat one time.
This is pretty much the names that Ken used to call with. And it's killing me right now that I can't remember. It wasn't Foxy Cleopatra, but it was something ridiculous like that.
Foxy Cleopatra.
It was like Starry.
To be honest with you, I listened to that 4 years after we did it, and I was still laughing about it. It was just the most hilarious 8 minutes of television and radio that I heard for a while.
It was.
I also want to get the point across about Shaun and Clint, because they decided they were going to have vengeance on me because I came on their program and acted like I was on methamphetamine. But when I did my show, it was all, straight conversation. Let's get to this issue.
Right.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I believe the first time you had me on, I played the straight man for about 10 minutes on your show. And I said, so tell me how this shit works. You come onto my show and act like an absolute lunatic, but I have to be on my best behavior with you? And the silence in your voice for about a minute and a half was really worth it.
What do you say? What do you say?
And again,
people didn't know our acting. People didn't connect the two characters, Ken McClinton, the serious, exceptional conservative show host,
and the one we got.
Team.
Yes. Yes. And I will be the honest hand to God, twice on social media, somebody had actually suggested that it wasn't really you that was on our show and that we were mocking you. That we were having some other person call and claim to be you and act like a total jackass. And kept saying, this is the exceptional, because we used to point that out all the time. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, the quiet and so reserved, exceptional conservative, serious newsman, serious reporter.
He's always
acting
serious.
like a total lunatic on a Sackhead show, God damn it. And we would say shit like that all the time with you as a joke. And people, twice on social media, people thought that it was somebody else calling in, acting like Ken, and that we were jamming him up.
And we were pulling that guy out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it is from Ken, I have to tell you. It's from Ken that I found out about this.
Mentioned anywhere
we've
in the
had a lot of
story.
laughs
And of
tonight,
course,
but I'll tell you what's
Tony's
not
death
funny.
didn't spark
Killing
international.
Oh, this killed it. Okay, keep going. I had two things playing at once.
I will tell
Where's
you.
my damn producer?
Can I ask Lonnie? Can I ask Lonnie a quick question? Sherry's chocolate. What is her favorite flavor again? You can talk to me. You can share that with me. Does she like peanuts, walnuts?
Hey, I'm not on AFA anymore. I'm still not telling you.
Hey, Lonnie, have you ever told Ken the story about the first night you visited the studio?
No, I haven't.
Was that the late night?
Oh, gosh. So,
you about the night that we talked all night?
I will tell you the whole. Is it okay if I tell the whole story, Lonnie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
so Lonnie came in, and Lonnie and I, obviously, we'd met through Ken, Melanie, Ralph, just that group of friends that we were, Shannon and Mike, that we were lucky to be a part of. And Lonnie and I had talked on and off for years at different times.
Right.
Never actually got to connect. There was three different times we missed each other, or we were trying to connect for a long time.
Well, Lonnie's way far away in D.C.
Well, and he was supposed to come to Freedom Fest one year. I was out on the East Coast near him. There was three different times, and maybe one of the other conventions that I was trying to get to early on. But either way, Lonnie and I had not met, and we were trying to. So when you said, "Hey, Lonnie's coming in studio," I was tickled pink.
Wait, I thought you had met him before.
Well, we had talked.
But that's the first time you'd ever met in person.
We had talked
I didn't realize
plenty
that.
of times. We had just never met one-on-one.
Oh.
And so it was great because it was like, it's Lonnie. It's like I've known him my whole life, you know? So he comes in and he does the show and rap. And, of course, I do what I do for all of my guests. Would you like a glass of bourbon? And Lonnie, of course, goes,
sure.
Why, thank you very much. I'll have a little bit.
Because he's kind.
I'll have a little bit. I'll say that one more time. I'll have a little bit.
What did he say?
I'll have a little bit.
Okay. All right.
I almost have the voice down. I'll have a little bit. So I
wait a minute. He's here right here. Why don't we, Lonnie, say that if you would, please.
I'll have a little bit.
There it is.
See?
There it is.
There we go.
So I pour him a glass, and he's doing the show. He's doing the show with BZ, and I'm sitting off to the side. And
you should. But can I tell you?
Let me say this.
Can I insert just this one? Let me just insert this one thing real quick. Lonnie's voice around the brothers is totally different from around the ladies. I just want to tell you that.
I know. As an honorary brother, I know.
In what way, Ken? What way?
Oh no.
There's no need to lower my voice around you knucklehead guys.
Yeah, no,
around the women. I'm taking it down another half octave.
There's not as much bass when he's talking about.
Around us, he's Lionel Richie.
It's not Lonnie.
Around us, he's Lionel Richie.
It's not. Hey, it's not. Hey guys. Hey guys, it's Lonnie. But instead, it's hey ladies.
Is he the Barry White of DC?
My name's Lonnie. How are you? You were looking absolutely luscious this evening. I didn't even tell you.
And they're screaming over as and they're lifting up their shrimp.
Well, the worst part,
and their little salad, they're screaming.
Everyone's always been out with a guy like Lonnie, where it doesn't matter like how good you look or like how clean or whatever. 5 women are going to be talking to him, and they're going to look at you like the hired help, be like, "Oh, while you're standing there, can you go get us a drink?" You know that when you get that smooth, he's just smooth.
I don't know about that.
There he is. There it is.
There's been a time that we
Yeah.
we've shared love and made love.
And copyright. Kill it. Kill it. Copyright. YouTube will kick it off. So
I forgot who I had come on as a guest, and they said, "Why is Lonnie's voice always lower when he has a female guest?"
It's true.
And everybody in the chat room was like, "Yeah, I noticed that too."
So I pour Lonnie a little bourbon, and the night goes on, and at the break, I think we refill, and we're BSing between sets, and we're BSing, and the show goes on, and we have a couple more drinks, and then the show ends, and lights on, and now we're all BZ. Lonnie and I were just yakking, and Lonnie and I are trading drinks back and forth, and I knew he Ubered, so I knew he didn't have to drive, so I wasn't worried about it. All of a sudden, BZ's like, "Hey guys, it's getting late. I got to take off.
I can't drink. I got to drive."
He can't drink because he had to drive, so he wanted to go home so he could hook up to the Kettle One.
Thank you.
The KC-135 extender, Kettle One refueling team.
Right. Thank you.
And so Lonnie and I would just, and I mean, when I tell you we did every typical drunk guy conversation, politics, what's wrong with the world, how we can solve it. And then for us, everyone has that miscellaneous add-on. It was radio and the people that we know, right? And that's just so all 3 guys talk about those 3 things, and then you have your individual little wild cards. And ours was radio and the people that we know. And we're telling all these different stories.
And you forgot about women.
Oh, yeah, and women. You're right, women as well.
Because divorce has never occurred to any of these guys.
Ever.
Us.
Ever. And just life in general. Just women in general. And all of a sudden, I look up, Ken, and we're close to a bottle of bourbon in at this point between the 2 of us.
Yeah.
And
okay, so I've left at 10:30.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not even midnight yet.
Well,
I've gone at 10:30.
I knew it was getting to the point when I stopped just getting ice and we were just drinking straight bourbon. We weren't even bothered cooling it down.
Fuck the ice. Yeah. Who needs ice? And ice is overrated.
And finally, I looked at the wall and I said, "Oh shit, Lonnie." And he said, "What?" And I said, "You won't believe what time it is." And he said, "It can't be much past midnight." Oh my gosh.
And we have 2 clocks in here.
And he's like, "I better call for does Uber run this late?" I can remember those words specifically coming out of your mouth. And I said, "Yeah, I think you'll be all right." It was 3:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah, at least, yeah.
Wow.
It was late.
And a bottle of bourbon later, 3:30 in the morning. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe we crushed a bottle of bourbon just sitting around on a Tuesday night." Like,
and you also said, "Fuck it, it's still early."
Oh yeah, it was. Oh, I suffered that next day, boy, because I had to be up at like 7 in the morning.
Oh, because of the kids, right?
Yeah, because of the kiddos.
Oh man,
good times.
Yeah, that was a great night, though.
It was a great night. So then,
that was my first time to the studio, and that was it was like coming home. It was like
you were.
Sit right in
it was as if literally we had seen you
every day
for years.
Yeah. Yep.
And all you did is come into the room again.
Yep. It was very much like that. It was like old home. And here's the other fun thing is telling stories about the studio and when BZ came to us. A lot of people didn't realize, just given the background that Clint and I have, and we hazed BZ quite a bit at the beginning of his tenure with us.
Recognition. And you know what else I appreciate?
Yes.
Is the trophy. I come in today, and there is like literally, it's like a 3.5 foot trophy, for me, because I actually made it in to work on time. And
doesn't happen often.
So no, and so look, you're taking a play out of the millennial playbook, and recognizing me for mediocrity.
Yes.
And look, I appreciate that, and it drives me to mediocrity.
It
really does. I mean, I have so many of these trophies. Honestly, just because I
putting the lid down.
Yeah,
gave you that one.
Yeah, you gave me the put the lid down one. Yep. You gave me. Oh, I found the power button.
You did find the power button. Big day for all, really.
Yeah, so you gave me a trophy.
It wasn't on anything important. It was actually on the printer. But you know what? I give you credit. Something turned on.
Right. And
that doesn't happen for you a lot
at all.
That was a real thing.
Very much at all. Wait, how many kids
Stop,
do I
pause
have?
this. Stop, pause this. All right, I just had the worst PTSD flashback.
I found the power button.
Because the reality of the situation was, I was looking for the power button on our old board because I'd never turned it off. We used to keep the board on between shows. We just did. And it got turned off earlier in the night. I was trying, or the night before we were in the studio, I was trying to figure out how to get the power to go back onto it because I'd never done it before. Clint is standing on the other side of the room in front of the printer, hits the power button on, and goes, "Does this work now?" He's not even near the damn thing I'm trying to fix. He's just turning random things on across the room.
I was crying.
So the next night on the air, that's when he said I turned the power on, but I found the power button. Because the night before, while I'm trying to actually fix something, he's on the wrong side of the room just randomly turning things on, looking for me to applaud him for finding power buttons. And that is the technological idiot that he is.
Oh, my God.
Look.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
That I know of. I have... It's funny because it's true.
Yeah. You're still young. Don't go pushing it.
I still can't tell that joke. The one we're making right there, I remember what it is. I can't even out it yet.
We do.
You know him from bloviatingzeppelin.com, BZ, who's sitting in with us in studio. He's going to tolerate the Sackheads this evening. Good evening to you, sir.
Oh, thank you kindly. Nice studio. I like it.
See, you know how many...
Okay, and that's about as much as I got out during the rest of the night. You guys riffed like crazy. But it was great just being in the studio. That's what I really appreciated about the studio, is just being here and being part of the ensemble that I'd watched before. You know, folks, have you ever been in a situation, either at work or with a bunch of people off duty or on a vacation or something like that, and there's a certain number of people that just click with you? And it especially in copdom, in cops, if you ever happen to get the right group of people around you on the same shift, it's killer. It can't be repeated. And that was what the Sackheads radio show had. Sackheads Shaun, Sackheads Clint.
You?
The two of you had a repartee between the two of you that can't be duplicated. And then to allow me to come in to be the third, after January 17th, 2017, that was the first day of my show. So I do a Tuesday night show and a Thursday night show. I loved doing the Wednesday show because...
The Wednesday Night Disaster, as I used to call it.
It's like I could relax. I could have fun. I could be me. I didn't have to worry about... It's like I told Ken on Monday night on Ken's show. I said... Doing a show by yourself is tough.
Yeah.
Especially if you got to do everything by yourself. You got to be the producer. You got to read. You got to write. You got to do the sound. Blah, 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 blah. Filling 2 hours of really good quality content is tough.
Yeah, it's brutal. When I was doing Edge of Liberty, when I was doing the live show out of Philly, an hour a day by myself producing as well. And you had to do an hour every single day, and I had to be on the air at 9 a.m. local time. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was awake starting my show stuff.
Oh yeah, you're it. Yep. There is no backup.
Yep.
And then the two of you guys, then the work gets broken down to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two get to riff off of each other, which you can't do solo, obviously. And then to have three people,
it spreads it out.
You're doing a third of the work, and it's every bit as funny, entertaining, and as amusing as it was before, and it's easier.
Yeah, and it was fun. And you know, we used to get caught into this, and you'll remember this. Before every show, we all used to kind of have our own topics that we would bring.
Right.
Mine would never get used. That was just a given. So I'd do all this research for nothing. And then we'd go off with BZ and Clint's. But what would happen is, on nights that it seemed like our topics were considerably heavier, whatever it was, especially if there was a tragic event that we were covering or something like that, we'd be stoic, but we'd get to the last 15 minutes of the show, and because we'd all have stayed on point, stayed on topic, we're hitting our marks for breaks, we're doing all that stuff, we're in that zone of like, we're actually reporting more than we're being a talk show. And then we'd be there like 15 minutes to the end of the show with nothing to talk about. And it would be the oddest, if you listen to those shows, it would be the oddest transition from like, and that's all we have right now, and as soon as we get more, we will fill you in. So, what do you guys want to do with the rest of the show? There was always that 15-minute block where we came up short.
Yeah.
Because we were just so fired up.
But we'd find it.
But it would always be a quiet kind of petering off end of our show. Then what would happen is, on the shows where we planned very little, we would shit on each other for an hour and 17 minutes.
Oh, before we'd even get to any of the stuff that we'd planned about talking
Hour 17 minutes. Then you add in 12 minutes of commercials, 3, 3, 3, and 3. So now you're looking at an hour and 29 minutes, 31 minutes of topics, and then halfway through the topics, we'd start hammering each other anyhow.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd never cover shit.
Right.
I can remember shows where we would literally have one topic that lasted 5 minutes, and the rest of the time was just giving each other shit.
Well, it got to the point where we had a big dry erase board, and Clint was in charge of the big dry erase board. And sometimes on video, you could see the big Clint dry erase board. Now, it was Clint's. It belonged to Clint. And Clint would take colors. And you were a color. And then Clint was a color.
I was red.
And then I was a color.
Yep. I think you were green. Clint was blue.
And Clint was very distinct about who would cover what topic.
Oh.
At what point. At what time. And Clint put about a lot of thought into it.
And
at least a minute.
And even on the days he wasn't here to fill out the board, he would call while he was driving here, and we would have to fill out the board.
I want you guys to talk about.
Can you guys
talk about this?
Can you put this on the board so we have the board ready when I get there? So this is going to be in red. This is going to be for you, Sean. I want you to write down blah, 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 blah. And then the next topic will be as he's driving. And then by the time you put the cap on the eraser and sit down, the show's starting and he's walking in the door.
Right.
So, but the other thing that was a blast to do with Clint and the magic board was when he would go to the bathroom is to change a topic on the board or change the color on the board to somebody else.
Clint found that remarkably humorless.
Yes, he did not like it. For all the things that Clint used to laugh about, going off the plan was
very different when it's you.
He was so mad. He'd get so mad. And most people, like, you don't know, because Clint was really good if something was going wrong. And everyone on the air right now, guys, there's always something that's going to go wrong in your show, right? It just happens.
That's why I love doing live.
Right.
I do.
Ken, Lonnie, yes?
That's correct. Absolutely.
And it will go wrong, and you know it's going to go wrong. Clint had...
It happened on Lonnie's show. It happened all the time whenever I showed up.
Well, that's because you showing up was it going wrong. That was really... But Clint had an impeccable manner of not acknowledging on camera or through the microphone when something was going wrong. You know, you could hear it with me. Like, if I'm starting to work on something, I'd start to get a little quiet, or you could hear the sliders going or whatever. Clint, you never heard that because he didn't have anything to do but talk, maybe. But the other side of it is he just, whatever notes we were passing each other or whatever, he would just read it on the slide and keep going. He was really, really good at that. So you guys didn't realize when we would be screwing with him and he'd get a little grumpy about something, you'd never know it until after the show.
No, yeah. Then we'd
know it.
We'd hear it.
I thought, how many times he would take the dry erase marker and kind of like go back over like we were children, reminding us what we agreed to before the show. Right. Well, I thought we were going to do this and that. Or my favorite one is, well, I guess we didn't get to these tonight, which was his way of saying, you guys screwed all that up.
All that stuff right there. And you had to go in order.
Yeah, in order. Oh, if you jumped out of order. Oh, don't jump out of order.
No.
Don't jump out of order.
No. Cliff Lunetta's pens.
Oh, we had so much fun with him, though. And you know, it was one of those things when we first started, it started because of what you said. When two people meet that have just the right personalities that click.
The stuff clicks.
And it was literally a mutual friend of ours who was like, you guys should do a radio show. That's how we started.
Wow.
And it was politics. Clint and I would always talk politics and like minds, so we would just banter back and forth. And it was a mutual friend who was like, you guys should record this. You guys should record this. You should record this. It's hysterical. You guys are funny. I didn't think we were funny. I didn't think anyone else would find us funny. Let me rephrase that. I thought we were hysterical. But I was pretty sure it was to a very small audience, right? To me and him, really. I think we were the only ones who found each other funny.
We're great. You guys suck.
We're hysterically funny to us, but we didn't care. There was nobody else to impress. And then we started to broadcast, and I'm like, there's no way anyone's going to find these two jackasses comedic. And all of a sudden, when we went to Spreaker, when we first really started having a couple of good years, and we're looking at 10,000 a show, 15,000 a show, I'm like, and people are sending us emails. Clint got recognized on a cruise. Remember that?
Oh, he talked about...
He got recognized on a cruise.
Unless...
By a fan.
He was lying. But Clint, no, Clint wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
Clint wouldn't do that.
If Clint bullshits you, he does it with a smile on his face, waiting to see how you react.
Right, the dagger behind the back.
Yep, but yeah, no, he's honest as they come. That's the problem sometimes with him, because he'll tell you look like shit.
Yeah,
but
I do.
So once all of that started, is that's when we started to realize, like, you start getting this responsibility to the people who are listening now that you didn't have before. And the ease of your show changes because now you feel responsible to those folks. These nice people who give you hours of their life for free to hear what you have to say. And at that time, we were having 10,000, 15,000 a week downloads. That's a lot of responsibility. And just before you came, and when we lost Sacco, and we knew we were going to lose Sacco because he was moving and how it just worked out. And I said to Clint, I can't produce and co-host the same way. We have to get somebody that's going to kind of fit with us and match with us. And we had been looking for other people. We had people that could have called, but we wanted in studio. We wanted that face-to-face dynamic.
Live is always better. I always, people love podcasts, blah, 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 blah.
We tried.
I love
our friend Liberal Jake, who's not liberal, even though he calls himself a liberal. It kills me every time. We tried him a few times, but he wasn't comfortable with himself on the air. That's really what it came down to. And I was like, we got to get somebody because I don't want to crash with what we have going. And at the time, I wanted to make a full run at this. I wanted this to be a full-time gig for all of us. So we were really trying to find that angle. And then when I came across BZ, and I talked to him that day at Starbucks, I said, this is great. I said, this is absolutely great. He can give it back to us. He can take it from us, which you need to. If you're going to sit in the studio with us, you have to be able to give and take.
Everybody that pitches has to catch.
Yep, you have to be able to give and take. There's no light lifting. Everyone pulls their weight here. And it was like that. Everyone pulled their weight on this show for a long time, on all the shows that we carried. Even our satellite shows or whatever, they pulled their weight. They always did their shows. They always put in that effort, and that was something that we appreciated because that's how we ran our show. And then when BZ came in, the load was lifted off my shoulders tremendously. I mean, I still had a lot going on, but just to be able to have somebody articulate, intelligent, funny, and be able to make fun of them, sit across from Clint and let me focus on the electronics and give that little bit more for me, it was huge. And I kept remembering, like, the first couple of shows, BZ would stay more quiet. And he's like, well, I'm just trying to wait to see. I'm just trying to kind of see. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude,
you don't want to jump in and be a dick from the very beginning.
And I think I told you I was sitting on the back deck. I don't know if I was still smoking at the time, but I said, you just got to chime in. You just start. But because we won't let you in to our conversation on the air. You got to fight your way into it. And then, because that's just how we are. We're bombastic assholes. And we always are. And then once you started like throwing it out a little bit and kind of jamming it back, I remember sitting back in the chair and I was like, thank God, this will make things a lot easier. And it was absolutely just smooth sailing. And then what happened was when Clint would have scheduling conflicts, we could still do the show.
Right, exactly. That was another cool thing is with 3 people, you didn't just immediately become a one-man band, and then at the last moment, because that's what Clint did,
right?
Then you have to immediately find 2 hours of something.
Well, and Clint, the way Clint, his schedule just worked that he didn't always know until the last minute.
He didn't
it was
know.
Unfortunate. But, and Ken, how many times did I call you at the last minute asking you to sit in on the last hour because you had your show, and I was by myself?
Well, I appreciated the fact that you offered me several baggies of heroin so that I would actually sit in.
Well, and I had them delivered directly to the Jockey Club.
Okay, exactly.
And at least he knew what driveway to go up because of that.
But I would tell you that the greatest joy when I was roaming through Blog Talk Radio was to hear you and Clint come together and just arguably be the best 1-2 punch in terms of expressing conservative points with the speed and liberality of humor. There were not too many people who were comfortable on one side or the other of that. You two melded that together, and when you had BZ join in, it was just a tremendous formulation of a great team. And it's sorely going to be missed. And quite frankly, I want to thank you for treating BZ like a Negro slave because it alleviated me of that responsibility.
Well, somebody had to be the punching bag.
Well, very much so, and that was our plan right along. Is we needed somebody local that we could better oppress.
Right.
Really,
somebody had to drive. Somebody had to drive the shit to Freedom Fest. Somebody had to load it in the car.
That was the best.
While the other people were flying first class.
Clint and I flew, and we made BZ drive the car to Vegas.
I drove the car. I carried the bags. I loaded the car with all the equipment.
I wish I was kidding about that.
No, he wasn't.
I know a lot of you guys see me like do all this stuff. You can see it when you watch on YouTube with the board and all that. I had no idea. Clint had no idea.
Clint still has no idea.
At the time, our buddy Sacco was helping us out.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Clint still has no clue. And he didn't know anything about broadcasting. He knew about sound mixing. And it was like a real early time. And we completely... Fucking technology.
Yep, that's it.
We completely just didn't know what we were doing. So we would listen to other Blog Talk shows. And that's where we met our good friend Ken McClinton. And we developed that friendship. And... You know, it was somebody else, but he also kind of helped us learn broadcast. And Dan Butcher, who's going to call in at 8:30 for a little bit, and because he was such a major part of SHR Media and Sackheads, and my friend and our friend. But we met Dan Butcher through there.
Was
and
this
we just
my last
started
show?
To go. You know,
Yeah.
John Grant at the 405 was the first time that we'd ever done a guest spot, and he couldn't believe that neither one of us. That was one of the greatest compliments.
What happened with John Grant? Because okay, let me stop right there. That's how long ago this was.
Yeah.
If you had to guess what year
My last show was?
The last show was, what would you say? Because I'm looking at it right in front of me.
My last full-time show with Sackheads, I would have to say, was end of 2018.
April 4th, 2018.
Yeah. So early.
It was that long ago.
Yeah. It was before my surgery.
First.
Yeah, my first surgery. Yeah. But it was before my knee recon. Yeah. That was a long time ago.
And Sean, we were after that. I must tell you, after that surgery, you did not look like a transgendered woman.
Well,
I just want to let you know.
And the goal was to not look like one, but I didn't want there to be any questions either. So that's a hard balance to really figure out.
Well, and the taxpayers weren't on the hoof for that, which I thought was good of you to not make the taxpayers cough up the bill.
That's why I had private insurance. One of the other things I always wanted to comment, God, you know what's funny is that was my last full-time show, and I just literally gave that whole conversation again tonight, which makes me giggle, because nothing's happened for me since between now and then. But one of the things I always wanted to point out about BZ, and for those who don't know, when you're sitting have you ever sat in a room and you know the person in the room with you is smarter than you are, and they're just being nice?
Shit.
That's BZ. And it was really hard for me because Clint's also that same person. Clint is incredibly intelligent.
And he was born in Hawaii.
Yes, and that has nothing to do with our conversation right now, so shut the fuck up. So...
See?
Clint was born in Hawaii.
Please refresh the drink.
BZ was born in...
right here, Sacramento.
Yeah, so why did you even say that?
Because it came into my brain.
You both weren't born in Hawaii. Like, there wasn't a connection
but I went
there.
to Hawaii once.
Good radio.
Thank you.
So...
Better than dead air.
But you have BZ, who's incredibly intelligent and just acts like he's not. You have Clint, who's incredibly intelligent and acts like he is. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay, good. Sit in the room with them if you want to feel like the dunce in the corner. And one of the things I get amazed at is if you watch, especially we'd be talking about history or elements of history and how it relates to today, is to watch Clint and BZ.
Clint knows
go back and forth. Don't act like you don't.
No, Clint knows a lot about stuff.
And don't act like you don't, is my point.
I can't remember what I had for dinner.
I know you lived through most of it, and that's why you have a
That's
good
why
idea.
I remember. It's so personal to me.
And for us, we had to read about it. But look, not everybody missed the opportunity to tell Lincoln not to go see a play. You just blew it. So, but that was always one of the things that was really an honor for me, was to sit in the room with two of the smartest people that I knew.
Hey, Lonnie, I think Lonnie had to check out. Lonnie is still there? No, Lonnie had to check out.
Oh, no.
He sent me a message.
Okay.
It was pumpkin time for him.
Okay. Well, I certainly thank Lonnie for his time. But that was something that to sit in the room with two of the really incredibly intelligent people and watch them converse over a topic that you're highly interested in was an honor. And I mean that. That's not a joke. That's not. There's no punchline to that. It was an honor to sit and watch BZ and Clint converse about topics that we hold near and dear to our heart: politics, history, the country, conservatism, and in such a intelligent and vibrant and happy, oftentimes, manner was incredible. So to watch that, I can remember times where I would become a listener because I was listening to you guys have those conversations, and I would just kind of stay out of the way. Like, hey, this is the best time for me to be an engineer right now. I'm going to engineer or produce or whatever I was doing. And I always thought that was really a cool thing to have.
Well, here's where I get maudlin. I don't say this very much because I just don't. When I retired in 2016, I went from being in charge of a couple of hundred people to the very next day in charge of no one and having zero responsibilities. and not being even remotely ready for that drastic change. One of the reasons I left the department is I got a fiscal incentive to leave because it got to the point where I was starting to lose money. But I hadn't planned anything because that's A, my nature, and B, I can remember being in 2010, right after the big crash in 2008, 2009, and I can remember thinking for a moment, just for a second, God, am I going to retire? No, I'm not going to retire. And I hadn't planned for a thing. I hadn't planned for any retirement. Bad on me.
Well, what to do with your retirement? You had a plan. You had your financial plan in order, but what to do with your time? And
that's
skills.
The other thing I had not planned as to the very next day. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people go to the very next day and then they wake up and they'll say something similar to, "Okay, now what?" Mm-hmm. Well, I went, "Okay, now what?" for almost a year, and I will tell you, I was lost. After having to make important and weighty decisions for a lot of people, and then being responsible for those decisions for what ended up being 41 years, and then being absolutely useful to no one, was tough for me. And then when I came across you guys in Sackheads Radio, that is what really kept me off the streets and off of heroin. Then it was fun. Then I found myself going back to the 1970s when I was in radio, and I thought, this is kind of a hobby, and I think I can do this, and it's going to be entertaining, and it's going to take my mind off all the other bullshit that's percolating around in the brain theater up here, which still, plays every night in the balcony of my own demise, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
And this is the maudlin part. This is what was important to me, and I will miss. You get in a thing of doing stuff. The thing became getting ready for a show, getting ready for Mondays with Ken, getting ready for a Tuesday show, getting ready for a Wednesday show with Sackheads, getting ready for a Thursday show, doing show prep, reading, processing, doing the politics, trying to find something entertaining for people for 2 hours, and then driving here, coming up the driveway, coming up the door, setting up the studio, talking to you, talking to Clint, talking to any of my guests that was here. I'm going to miss the process of driving here, because what this little stupid room represents to me is this was an incredibly necessary diversion for me so I didn't lose my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not be important to you or a lot of other people because, we all have good shows or bad shows. Absent that, this has been a critical stress pressure valve for me, and so what this little room represents is all those great memories of all the great times with you and Clint and all the people that called in during those shows. That's what I miss already. That's what I missed last week, and that's what I missed when I texted you that I was probably going to be maudlin tonight.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not like you're going anywhere.
Yeah.
Not yet.
It's not over yet. And one of the things I learned in stepping away from the show, and if you listen to my last show, I was maudlin is a nice word for it. I was choked up. I was pretty emotional. It wasn't something that I wanted. I wasn't sick of it and wanted to walk away per se. There was just
there was no other alternative.
Yeah, it just was. But one of the things that I was able to do is I co-hosted it here and there. I filled in for you a few times. I'd guest on your show a few times. you find a way to fill that gap. But like I said to you today, you're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. We'll still have those times to go get lunch, go get a cup of coffee, well, you don't drink coffee, but come over here and sit on the couch. We can bullshit about politics. I don't care. That's fine. We can still do all of those things, and you still get to do your show, just in a different place. And that's not always easy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be worse. It's just going to be different. Well,
that's true. And I will tell you this, folks, and those who are older know it, the older you get, the less you like change.
Yeah.
Because your life up to that point has been nothing but being steamrollered by change.
Mm-hmm. And it still changes all the time.
And you still have no choice.
Yep. And the one thing that I am 100% sure of is I am unsure of what the future holds. But, it's like everything else. It's what you want it to be. And if nothing else, the last couple of years since my first knee surgery has shown me is if you look at it like it's going to suck, guess what? It's going to suck, no matter what it is. If you immediately go, oh, God, this is going to... And I'm not a positive person. I'm not a happy person, per se. I'm not like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But if you look at it...
That ain't me.
Yep. But if you can look at something that's a task or something that's going to change or whatever and be like, all right, I'm going to beat it. Sometimes that's enough to make it enjoyable. And like you said, when I was down and out with my knee and I was having a really bad year, I used to have that mindset all the time before that of, all right, whatever this is, I'm going to win because that's what I do. And when I lost that for that year, that was a really hard thing to regain. Because it's like a weird self-confidence disappearance.
And imagine that and all those challenges then in 2020.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I went through it again in 2020.
Exactly. And then it didn't stop. So we're all in the same basket.
Yeah. No, and 100% in the same basket. I tell everyone, 2019, personally, I thought was the worst year I've ever had in my life. 2020 showed that I was wrong.
Yeah. And 2021 is on the way to...
21 is doing its best to at least win a silver medal.
It's trying to compete seriously with 2020.
So, and as all your listeners know, that doesn't mean that I won't call in at some point. That doesn't mean that, the show's going away. It's just going to change a little bit. But that doesn't mean it's bad.
No, and I'm otherwise going to be occupied by doing a whole bunch of other stuff anyway.
And hopefully...
Like I told everybody, I'm leaving this state. You're leaving this state. I've had enough. You've had enough.
Oh, yeah. There's only so many times. Look, there's a great meme out there from South Park where it shows one of the teachers all beaten up, and the quote underneath says, "I ain't hear no bell." And that's literally like my whole approach to life right now. I'm like, I ain't hear no bell. I ain't going down yet. I ain't done. The fight ain't over. And that's literally how you just have to take on everything.
It's like Van Halen said, I don't feel tardy.
I don't feel tardy.
Then there's this.
Hi, I'm Peter Griffin. We've had a lot of laughs tonight, but I'll tell you what's not funny. Killing strippers.
Well,
strippers are people, too. Naked people who may be willing to pleasure you for a price you negotiate later behind the curtain at a VIP room. Besides, there's no need to kill them, because most of them are already dead inside. Good night, everyone.
There is a comedian, and this always reminds me of that. There's a comedian, he used to do Insomniac on Comedy Central, Dave Attell, years ago.
What's his last name?
Attell, Attel.
Okay.
And he used to do commercials for Jaeger. And
Jägermeister?
And he used to say, he's like, I wonder who comes up with commercials for Jaeger, because I've written a few. And the first one he says, he's like, there's a girl swinging on a swing. She's sad. One single tear down her face. She looks at the camera. Where's Daddy? Jaeger. And that's the whole commercial. But they do another one, or he does another one. He's like, a man crawls crawls out of a bush. He's covered in blood, holding one high heel. Did I just eat a hooker? Jaeger.
Well, it's been 2.5 hours, so I guess I'm going to have to wrap it up.
Yes, sir.
I have had no promos tonight, just on account of because, and it's my show. So for everyone who has been listening, I'm not going away. I had talked to Ken about this. Ken already knows, and I'd been talking to Shaun about this, and Jeremy, and a whole bunch of other people. I'm probably not going to have any more Tuesday night shows for a while. I'm just too busy doing other junk. I will try to have a Thursday night show as frequently as I can. I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weeks looking for a potential someplace to move to. Trying to figure out how to sell 2 homes and then coordinate the purchase of another home.
Just piece of cake.
Which is, in my 7th decade, that's easy as hell.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, come on. So I'm going to have to move
You're a
the
wuss
studio.
if you don't do it.
And then I'm going to have to solicit Shaun to help me set up the studio
Twice.
Twice?
Well, I'm going to be setting it up when you get back.
Down in my... Thank God I have a wife who's so kind to say, you know what? You can put it in in my living room.
And then I'm going to end up traveling to wherever you moved to install it again. That'll cost you.
Jamaica, man?
That one's going to cost you. There's a service fee for that one.
Ooh. I hadn't thought about number 2, but now that you offer...
Dude, I had, as soon as you mentioned moving out of state, I had already assumed the fact that I would be making that trek to set up a studio somewhere.
Okay, well, someone having offered may receive a phone call from certain personnel.
There's a bill in the mail.
About things similar to that.
There's a bill in the mail.
Yeah, well, not like this stuff is cheap.
No, it's not.
None of this stuff
is at all
cheap. Ken can attest to that.
Yeah. The only
I can tell you. But can I just interject just one quick thing here before you all part?
Sure.
Kudos and thanksgiving unto God for Mary Brockman, who brought us all together in the first place.
Yes, very much so.
That reminds me, going through, Ken, a bunch of photos from SHR. Shaun, you may have sent this to me because I did not take this. I did not ever meet Mary Brockman, but I have a photograph in the process of getting Maudlin over leaving in the studio, and I went through a bunch of SHR photos. I have a photo of you and Clint standing next to Mary Brockman.
Yeah, that was Freedom Fest the first year.
So I'm going to send that to you.
Awesome.
I'm going to send that, Ken, I'm going to send a copy of that to you, and then I'm going to post that photo probably on Twitter at BZEP, because once I saw that, and especially now that Mary Brockman has passed away, Ken, I think you would like that photo, and I'm specifically going to send it to you. It's a great photo.
I would love it indeed. Gentlemen, as I depart from you, I pray God's blessings of prosperity and love upon you, and as well that we shall abide again together someday very soon in his holy presence. You guys are exactly what America needs. In terms of not only reforming our country, but making certain that our hearts and souls are together as friends and family. So I love you guys. Anything you need, I'm here for you, and I will support you. I will even point to where the boxes should be placed.
Thank you.
When you move.
That's a great service. Because me having to try to figure out where all Ken's stuff goes, that's tough in and of itself. So at least he'll be giving me a little bit of guidance.
Yeah, you know, he can say he's against reparations all you want, but when it comes to stuff like that, I'm not 100%. All of a sudden, he's going to point to us where the boxes go? Yeah, I don't think so, pal.
Yeah. Although Shaun already got away with pointing where the luggage went up to the 21st floor of his room.
That was you.
Yeah. That was
Make sure that finds it to my room.
Yeah, that was 2016.
He's 70-something years old.
Yeah.
We were calling him rookie the whole weekend.
Yeah. Oh, folks. Don't think that didn't happen.
Hey, Rook.
Don't think that those words weren't
Boot,
used.
can you go get me a cup of coffee?
Right. Boot.
And real quick, Sean,
Yes,
Sean,
sir.
if you do have to go visit to set things up for him, make sure that you travel the same way you traveled in Vegas.
Oh, by air.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
First class, man.
First class. Oh, no, if I'm not getting champagne before we take off, it's not really a plane.
No, and it's not really a good trip.
Ken, trust me, you saw how I lived. I will make sure it'll cost him. It will cost him.
Exactly.
I'm not doubting
God bless y'all.
Hey, God bless.
Take care.
Love you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. Love you too.
Well, only because it is 1:30
on the East Coast
a.m. where Ken is on the East Coast.
Das East Coast.
And so good night to Lonnie. Good night to Ken. To everybody who is in the chat room, I thank you very much. Physically, I'm not going to be around for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be going to 3 different states, talking to realtors, blah, 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 blah. When I get back, it'll be a matter of me trying to figure out what time is convenient to move the studio. When the studio gets moved, I will continue having shows until I have to go to another state, and everything's up in the air. So all I'm saying is that I will try to be as consistent as possible.
Bear with him.
There is no guarantee, because if there's one thing I don't want to do is completely lose whatever audience I've built up over the past couple of years, and not being consistent is an audience killer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the best that I can do, because I, like you, I can't be in this state anymore. I can't see myself getting raped for money.
Mm-mm.
I don't fit in. I don't speak Spanish, nor am I going to. This state is not my future. It is driving itself down into a hole.
It's the past.
And when it does, I don't want to be here when it implodes.
Yeah, it's not the future. It's the past. That's the problem.
And it just, there are so many other things that I could say about it. Is I can't be a part of this anymore. Sean can't be a part of this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And for all the people that are staying behind,
good luck.
Good damn luck. I'm not turning the lights off. That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the state will turn the lights off itself.
Yeah, I was going to say, just wait for summertime. It turns it off all the time.
Yeah, just talk to Cal ISO about that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, Sean, it's au revoir for me for a while. It's au revoir for you. I will be seeing you later. Folks, I will keep in touch by way of social media. Like I say, no show for the next 2 weeks. And then when I get back, we'll attempt to reassemble the studio. And I will try to keep a consistent semblance of at least one show a week. And I'll let everybody know. Thanks to everybody. Well, I had a great time.
As did I.
As did you. Thanks to Lonnie. Thanks to Ken. Thanks to Jax. Thanks to Sergeant Booker. Thanks to all the guests I've had on the show. I'm not going away. I'm just going away for a little bit because, well, everybody knows why. Had a great time. Really, really glad that you had the opportunity to make it tonight. Sackhead Shaun.
My pleasure. I thank you very much.
We invited Clint to the studio because we knew that this is going to be it.
The last hurrah.
For the studio, or at least for the setup in the studio. And he's busy. I get it. So there have been people who've been saying, is Sackhead's Clint coming back? And the answer is no. So that's the name of that tune. And from here, I'll be wrapping things up, putting my laptop away, closing the door. Sean will be going to Betty Bye, and I'll be having some Kettle One from my KC-135 Kettle One refueling team. God bless you all. God bless America. Take care and be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.